Put down your mock drafts as the NFL draft is finally here. It seems like just yesterday we were doing this. 2021's NFL draft. This now the 2022 NFL draft show here presented by Pittsburgh Sports Live and Steelers Now, and really all throughout the Sports Now family of networks, in particular as well Pittsburgh Sports Now, the mothership, because we have a lot of local flavor potentially in this draft and in this show. What will the Steelers do? Will they go quarterback? Will it be Malik Willis? Will it be Kenny Pickett, the hometown kid? Will they sit? Will they trade up? Will the board fall to them? What will happen around them? Will there be any stars in the NFL that are traded that shake things up? We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to kind of sit and let the board fall to us like the Pittsburgh Steelers are likely to do. And feel free, bottom of this video, hit that subscribe button, comment, chat along with us, talk with us, follow us over there at Steelers Now, Pittsburgh Sports Now, all throughout the Now family of networks. We'll also have coverage at Nittany Sports Now and WV Sports Now as well. I'm, of course, your host, Mike Asti, and I will be joined by our draft guru, our draft expert, Nick Farabaugh, who you may have heard on Draft Talk. Him and Alan Saunders throughout this month have really been knocking out the draft talk coverage there, literally. So you're going to have him all throughout this show, as always. Alan may pop in and out. He's actually covering it for us over there at the South Side and enjoying some wings. So I'm kind of a little jealous of him there. And also Karl Ludwig of our network, who is a big force throughout our college network, especially Pittsburgh Sports Now, WV Sports Now, Nittany Sports Now, of course. So we're going to be able to talk Steelers, be able to talk Pickett, and kind of wrap it all together. And Nick, we were talking off air because you and I have pulled off the gauntlet. We've done every single year. There's been a live NFL draft show for Pittsburgh Sports Live and our Sports Now network. We both have been a part of it. So we continue our Kyle Ripken streak here. And this feels like the most unpredictable year of all. This feels like the one that is the toughest to prepare for, the toughest to get ready for. All the shows you've done, all the shows I've done and appeared on, and everything everyone's discussed and tweeted about and debate about. No one really knows for sure, and it all might be irrelevant and for naught, because we're headed into now minutes away from that first overall pick. Not really sure who that first overall pick's going to be. And that's very, very rare, whether it be Trevor Lawrence or even the Steelers looking at Najee Harris all through last year, not first overall, but waiting for him. You don't know what the Steelers are going to be able to do. You don't know what the first overall pick is going to be. It's almost exciting in a way, though. It's kind of an adrenaline rush.
Makes it fun. I'll say that. I find this one to be a lot more fun than I think any other draft we've done. And that's saying something. Listen, right. we knew who the first overall picks were going to be in the last two drafts. Right. This is a rarity. You don't get this very often where you have no clue who the first overall pick is going to be. You don't have any clue what any pick's going to be. I mean, the last few years we've had a inkling of who the Steelers would pick, for example, right?
Right.
Like we kind of knew the Steelers would pick Najee. We didn't know Claypool the year before, but that's a second round pick.
Sure.
So there were like inklings of things there. But this is an unpredictable draft for every team, including Pittsburgh. No one knows where Malik Willis is going to fall. No one knows where these edge rushers are going to fall, the tackles, whatever. There's so much going on. This is the wackiest draft I can remember over the past 5 to 10 years or so. It's really a draft that has no top quarterback. And you're kind of seeing the effects of that because there's no top guy either. There's no. That's the weird thing. There's no top quarterback, and there's no top, that dude's the best player in this draft either. This is a rarity. You don't see a draft where there is no consensus on both of those things. And that's what makes this really fun. So we're going to I think we're going to see a lot of surprises tonight. I really do. I think we're going to see a lot of guys that we don't expect to go as early, go earlier than they think. Some guys are going to slip. I think you're going to see a lot of guys go where you did not expect them to go.
Yeah, and not to say the other years weren't fun, and also we did one location before COVID became a thing. But yeah, this being so so hard to predict kind of does add that extra excitement. And if there's not surprises here, I think it'd be really, really disappointing when you think about it. But this is one that you just aren't sure going in. Nick Farabaugh, Karl Ludwig, Mike Asti here. If you're just joining us, our NFL draft show on PSL Steelers Now, all throughout the Now and family of networks. Of course, hit us up, chat along. We do see some of you here joining us already. And Nick, again, as you said, it's impossible to peg this. It's impossible to predict this. Really, you don't have that legit guy that is leading this draft. This is part of why many who we're going to be talking about aren't in Las Vegas, because they might not have been sure if they were going to be selected while the camera was on them or where they would slide to. Kenny Pickett in particular not there. So that adds an extra element of this. And this is kind of the furthest from COVID since COVID became a thing for how the NFL is covering. But even going back to your quarterback comment, Mel Kiper, the national guru of all gurus, his top two quarterbacks, Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett, I believe he has them, 17 and 18 or 16 and 17 in that neighborhood. So according to his value, he doesn't think any quarterback should be taken in the first 15 picks, which would just be insane. And that certainly would be an anomaly, and not whether it's what happens or not based on value. You very rarely see that. So as we get underway here into the actual draft, what do you think happens with that first overall pick? And how does that impact the rest of the draft afterward, depending on what happens with that first overall pick, Nick?
And it's huge because it's going to really detail the tackle situation. And this is huge because Carolina's sitting there at 6. And for Pittsburgh, that matters. It's going to be the difference between Carolina trading back, Carolina selecting Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, or potentially selecting a tackle. And that's significant for Pittsburgh. So this is going to be big time. I mean, you can see like Alan and I did Draft Talker today, and it was kind of, okay, how is this board going to fall? And we kind of mocked through it, who we thought was going to go where and what was going to happen. And the biggest thing that we kind of came away with was, yeah, we kind of feel like the board can fall so many different ways and nothing is certain. So honestly, I'm honestly feeling like this one is going to be an edge rusher, and that's my feeling right now. But if it goes tackle, that's completely going to change the game. They could even go, somewhere else like corner if they really want to surprise people. So who knows?
Yeah, it certainly could be the case there, Karl, to get you involved here. And you've covered a lot of these college players. You've covered a lot of these, certainly players that Pitt, West Virginia, Penn State in particular. Obviously, we're going to be covering those sites. And the main name is Kenny Pickett, of course, out of all of those. Based on what happens in these early picks, certainly the first overall pick, how does that impact the rest of the board for you, in particular the quarterbacks, in particular Kenny Pickett? And do you feel like he is the number 2 behind Malik Willis? So obviously if Malik Willis does go very early, does that have Kenny Pickett be reached for earlier than where his value shows? Or is there a chance he can actually fall all the way into the Steelers' lap all the way at pick 20?
Right. Well, I don't think Kenny Pickett is really a factor here until at least the Panthers pick at 6.
Right.
I mean, the top couple guys are going to be edge rushers, offensive tackles, maybe a cornerback or 2, or just the one mainly from Cincinnati. But like Nick said, really the pick at 1 is going to be a huge setter here for just how the whole process plays out. If it goes the tackle from NC State, that could really make a huge kind of twist in the process. But there's also Trayvon Walker from Georgia. There's Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. There's a lot of strong defensive guys in this draft, but quarterback really won't be an issue here until the Panthers pick at 6. And at that point, we're very well aware now of the connection with Matt Rule and Kenny Pickett and the whole process of those two guys working together. And if he doesn't go there, then I can't see him going until at least probably the Saints at 16, maybe, and then maybe 19 after that. I mean, I think
the Saints
if he falls past 10, I could see him having a little bit of a slide there, unless the team trades up for him.
Yeah, and then it's the whole thought process of what's kind of the best situation for him. And if you're Kenny Pickett in your camp, where are you kind of secretly hoping to be? This is post Drew Brees. It's the Saints' weapons are a little older right now. Would that really be a great situation? They kind of given up the Hill experiment. But what would that situation look like for Kenny Pickett in comparison to, say, Carolina? The Jacksonville Jaguars officially on the clock now, and unlike in past years, Nick, they're churning this clock. So again, this isn't jumping on the stage, slapping high fives with Ice Cube. This is churning the clock now. This is taking to this point 10 minutes, and I would imagine they have this pick in their mind before this clock starts. But we've seen wackier things. This is the first overall pick, so they don't have to wait for the board to fall to them. So again, we are waiting for Jacksonville to officially announce the first overall pick and kind of set the tone. Is this draft, Nick, as a theme, going to be about the quarterbacks and what happens, or is this going to be about something else altogether? Because the funny part of that is the conversation on every show around basically has been headlined by the quarterbacks. And I know you guys on Draft Talk, you try to touch it all. It's what we do here on Steelers Now and throughout the Now Network. We try to touch it all and be unique, but everyone's focusing on the quarterback. It makes sense to focus on the quarterback, but with the value of the QBs being, I guess, so low for many national pundits, and yeah, one could go at 6, maybe even a few spots earlier, or neither could go in the top 10. And then you're bringing up Ryder and others as well. And Sam Howell, who was talked about months ago as a top guy, he's lucky to be in the first round, it almost appears. Could this be about where the quarterbacks go, about something else, or maybe where the quarterbacks don't go? And this could just be a bad quarterback draft for everyone.
Well, the quarterbacks are always going to be a topic of discussion. I don't know if that's going to be the main talk of this, depending on kind of who moves where. It's obviously going to be one of the main points, but I think that top of the board is just as interesting. You know, where do all these edge rushers land? Like, where does Kayvon Thibodeaux go? Where does Aiden Hutchinson go? Where does Trayvon Walker go? I feel like you're talking corners. Where does Sauce go? Stingley, you know, if the Stingley to 3 at Houston is the rumor right now, where does Sauce go then from there? Like, there are a lot of things to me that play out in this class that we don't know. I think there are going to be a lot of interesting stories. The receivers are going to be a big one because there's no marquee quarterback. Obviously, the quarterbacks will dominate the headlines, but I think this top of this draft here with all these tackles, the 2 corners, and then you have the 3 edge rushers have a really interesting ability to dominate those headlines too. Now, again, I expect one of the edge rushers to come off the board here at 1. My guess is this is going to be Trayvon Walker from Georgia. That's kind of been what the thought is recently. Yeah. I tend to think it's him. Now they're taking some time, of course, to decide this, but the kid's athleticism is special. And Trayvon Walker's athleticism is special, even compared to Thibodeaux and Hutchinson. He's just a special athlete. Now the tape's good. He's played around a lot of first-round picks, though, and a lot of unbelievable players there at Georgia. This is going to be a guy, though, that has the ability, I mean, the ceiling to just be absolutely huge and has a super, super versatile skill set to work anywhere on the interior and the edge. He's such a fun player. This is going to be a really interesting pick if they take Trayvon Walker, which is what I think they'll do. Man, I'll tell you what, one of the most juiced up edge rushers we've had come out in a long time.
What do you mean by that? Juiced up? I'm just joking there. I'm in terms of the it also feels like if you're Jacksonville, you add Trevor Lawrence, you bounce Urban Meyer, you deal with drama, you deal with building the franchise all over again. You're clearly building around your young quarterback, and you're kind of, again, now you have a championship head coach, you have a kind of more continuity, maybe stability there, but you're still probably in a situation where you're looking at best available. You're just looking at best available. I mean, I guess that could be a question. Are you looking at best available in general, or maybe you want to build around Trevor Lawrence and you bring up wide receiver and other positions? I mean, obviously, first overall, that would be an incredible reach. But are you focusing in on, if you guys are the GMs here for the Jaguars, what Trevor Lawrence needs, whether it be O-line or weaponry, or just best available in general? Because this is a franchise that is still years removed from a solid contending season and likely still years away from being a true winner. You need a lot there still, adding on Trevor Lawrence.
Well, you're trying to build around Trevor Lawrence as much as possible, but you just signed Cam Robinson, your left tackle, to a big-time extension, so you feel like you have that. Again, that's why you lead to edge rusher. You have one of those edge rushers and Josh Allen, but you don't have another one. So I feel like you take the chance at a BPA pick here. I think that's what it is. It's all about BPA, and one of those BPA picks is going to be one of those edge rushers, and the pick is in. So
I see the pick is in here. And again, I don't know who's actually I might be a few seconds behind. Same with Karl, same with Nick. So we'll see. We're all gauging this from different avenues of different outlets. We do actually have some chat activity here, so I will go to you guys in the chat once we get this pick officially delivered. The Jaguars pick is in on our 2022 NFL draft show here. We're going all the way into the Steelers pick and then beyond. So this is the journey for us. Steelers don't pick until 20 unless, as Nick alluded to, something wild happens. And I don't know if any of us are predicting the Steelers to crazily trade up, but hey, this would be the wild draft. And I don't think anybody would be shocked at anything that could happen.
And as expected, it's Trayvon Walker.
There it is, since it's been unpredictable. But yes, Walker does go. So maybe not as unpredictable as maybe it sounded going in. You kind of get that conventional pick. So Karl, thoughts on this selection, kind of what we thought coming in, even though it's been an unpredictable draft.
Right. Well, like you said, I mean, at this point in the rebuild, the Jacksonville has a lot of needs, and if you're looking for the pure upside pick here, Trayvon Walker was the easy fit here. I mean, he like Nick said, he's a limitless kind of upside kind of guy. He's just 6'5", 275. He's fast. He's strong. I mean, he'll be a perfect fit to Josh Allen on the edge there or inside if you want to put him there. He's just at this point in the rebuild, it's not about who can play where. It's about finding the guys who will play regardless of who else is brought in. And Trayvon Walker is a guy. If they can develop him and put him into the system, he'll be a perennial all-star kind of guy or all pro kind of guy. So I think it's a great pick, obviously, but that does set the tone here now for the edge rushers, for the offensive tackles to see just who's up next. I mean, it's going to be, that's not really a surprise in any way, but as we move on here, I think we'll open up a bit more.
I think it also gives you your anchor on offense, which is clearly Lawrence, and then you get your anchor on defense in terms of the two guys you're building around now to the future as you're building up this franchise, and you do feel like more stability is there right now, certainly than what it was last year. So Walker does go to the to the Jaguars there. And see, you get a DN, so you end up getting that rusher there, and Trayvon Walker going defensive end to the Jacksonville Jaguars. First overall pick. It's an unpredictable draft, but maybe kind of what we thought in that first overall pick. Detroit currently now on the clock. Before we get to what Detroit too. Yeah, the pick is in. Before I get quickly to what Detroit's going to do, is they still got to walk up there on the stage from what I'm seeing. I got some chat activity here. Do not give up draft picks to move up and get a player. We need all these picks. I'm assuming Ed here is talking about the Steelers. Just in general, Nick, as we get into this pick for the Lions, which unlike Jacksonville took about 30 seconds, where the Jaguars took almost the full 15. Is this the kind of draft that's been so unpredictable, and there's so much uncertainty and so many things go all different directions, and there's nobody who's legit slam dunk, even with Walker going the first overall. Does that make this a draft that you'd be scared to move up and go grab a guy and give up tons of value? Or maybe a draft where you could be proactive and do that because there are so few diamonds in the rough that if you have a guy you like more than another, you got to risk it all to go get that guy because you're not comfortable with who you're falling back on?
I think there are going to be some guys that fall down the board. I said this earlier. I think we're going to have a draft where we're going to see some guys fall a little bit. And so I truly think that you're going to get someone like a Kyle Hamilton or, Andrew Booth or one of these quarterbacks that's going to fall into a range that just makes sense to make the trade up for. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad draft. It doesn't have the elite top, but it has a bunch of really good players. And once you start getting to the 10 to 25 range, it's such good value that some of those 1 through 10 guys might fall down the board a little bit because you're trying to get a need. Maybe a quarterback comes in that you're going to want to kind of go away from it. I think that there's going to be some trade ups here, and I think it's worth it for some of these guys.
Well, we had the Lions pick is in. Any thoughts, guys, on what the Lions are going to do or should do? I still don't yet have the pick announced for me, but I'm a few seconds back here. What should they do?
I would go with Thibodeaux, but they just went Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah.
Okay. That was my guess with Hutchinson. I mean, the local kid, bring him in. He's the mouthpiece for the defense now.
So we're getting a lot of defensive activity here. We're getting back-to-back DNs actually to start off this draft, which kind of maybe does set the tone for the quarterbacks, at least in terms of the value that's believed on them. Nick, why do you not like this pick? I guess you thought this pick was coming, which can make sense due to the local connection, but you would have went in a different direction.
I just think Hutch is a bit of a one-trick pony almost. I like, not that he isn't a good player, but he's kind of just a power rusher right now. And that's the thing that worries me a little bit about Aiden Hutchinson. He's a really fun player, and he can play all downs. He can bend. He's got good things. He just doesn't really have the speed rush package yet. And he's a really great athlete, and I think people really underrate his athleticism. But I think Thibodeaux is just such a dynamic athlete, one of those special athletes you don't find a lot of. He's just a guy that can win in different ways and can win in more ways than Hutch. I think there's just more bust potential with Hutchinson because of the way he wins. How he could be a really good player and not reach this kind of status, and that would be my worry. But I think Thibodeaux overall just kind of fits what you look for in the prototypical star at outside linebacker. I think Hutchinson's a good player. I'm not sure he's better than Thibodeaux.
The interesting piece of news that I just saw go through the wire there, and I will cite Ian Rappaport on this, just to double check that we got a blue check mark, and we do there. So Trayvon Walker ended up going first overall, apparently was in a kind of serious car accident just the other day. So that didn't change anything in terms of the dynamicism of him being the pick. You do wonder the thought process and how much they waffled, because unlike past drafts, it was not a slam dunk. It was not a quarterback. It was not widely known. It wasn't a year that we were sitting there waiting for that first overall pick to be announced, and we knew it was coming. It was kind of a surprise, as much as you can be a surprise, even though no one was too shocked by it. But Trayvon Walker, apparently in a car accident, ends up going first overall to the Jags. And then you see here with Aiden Hutchinson going to the Detroit Lions. The Texans are the team on the clock right now. And of course, they're in the post Deshaun Watson era, and the drama and the athleticism and everything that era was is now behind them. They need pretty much everything. Honestly, they really, really do. Nick Farabaugh, Karl Ludwig, Mike Asti here, maybe Alan Saunders to join us later. He is on location in the South Side. This is our 2022 NFL Draft Show here live on Pittsburgh Sports Live. We have some chat activity, so feel free to also join Ed and others in the chat. Keep them coming. We will respond to that chat activity, and we're going to be here for a while. As Nick knows, it sounds like only 20 picks, but before you know it, 3.5 hours later, and we're still talking about the draft. So we're pulling the gauntlet for you. So feel free to join in. And of course, follow our coverage over there at Steelers Now and at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter, and subscribe here to the channel. We'll have tons of clips, tons of content churned here on the channel as well from this show, if you don't want to do the gauntlet with us and linger all the way along. So thoughts on the Texans now. And as I said, they pretty much need everything. I would say they're the team above every other team in the entire draft, including the Jaguars, because they got their quarterback in the past. That the Texans need everything. I mean, they could go every single different way in terms of position of need. It's all of them. Best available. Who is it? What do the Texans do? And how do you prioritize what you need to do when you're a team that literally needs to do it all?
Well, this is an area where you can go anywhere. Tackle, you can go Thibodeaux. We could see three edges off the board right after another. I think this is corner, though. And I talked about this. Derek Stingley, I think, is the pick here. And I think the right pick. I think we're talking about a guy whose ceiling is Jalen Ramsey 2.0. I mean, okay. I am saying that. I think Stingley, the 2019 tape is some of the best corner tape we have seen in college football in the past decade. Wow. He is really one of those special players. Elite ball skills, elite athleticism, has all the fluidity you want, has great eyes, which matters a lot. Now, the injuries are the big concern with him. That's the big concern with Derek Stingley. Comes from a football bloodline, though. This is a special type of player where if he reaches his ceiling, we are talking about a potential for him to be the best cornerback in the draft.
Okay, pick is in. That would be high for a corner. I mean, that certainly would be high in general. Third overall for a corner. The ceiling could be there, but this is kind of a draft overall that it feels like a lot of players, Malik Willis, a quarterback, this is brought up a lot with him. There's a high ceiling, but if you're going to get there is a whole other question, because there's plenty of players throughout history that have a ceiling they didn't nearly get to. Texans do have that pick officially in. Is that in? Am I missing it here?
Nope, it's in.
Okay. Yeah, it's officially in. I was meaning, was that announced yet? Do we have the player? Carl, any thoughts here as we're waiting for these final seconds on the Texans? Again, they need it all. Nick's going corner. That's high for a corner in general, but there it is.
Well, as Nick was saying, Stingley isn't a crazy athlete. I mean, he was hurt most of the year, but he ran like a 4.43 40 in his pro day. He's a freak athlete. He comes from a freak program. If looking for corner, it's gonna be him or Sauce Gardner. Either one is a very, very strong option, but Derek Stingley definitely has that upside.
Yeah, and there it is. Roger Goodell there on the podium making the announcement. And there it is. So Derek Stingley, cornerback, LSU. So it's not 3 straight edge rushers. It's back-to-back defensive ends. We go Walker, Hutchinson, and now Stingley, 3rd overall as a corner. Guys, is this just a scenario where he's such a freak, the ceiling's so high, you need everything, you got to do it, you're comfortable with doing it, even though there maybe are other positions in general in the sport, like obviously quarterback, that are valued higher. Maybe that's not a direction they were going to go, even though corner is important. And that doesn't necessarily mean this is now going to create a trek of corners once again being top 5 picks. This is going to change the thought process of future college players and drafts for the position, or is this just an anomaly because of this individual that it warrants being drafted this high, but the position maybe is not going to command a top 3 selection in the coming years, since it's not common to see it this high normally?
I think corners are at a premium now, especially corner ones. I just think he's the type of rare corner that you have to take this high. Even Jalen Ramsey wasn't taken this high, but
right, that's what I'm saying.
No, special. We're talking about a special talent here, and I really truly believe that. And I know not everyone will see that, but I think we're talking about a guy with rare skills, a true hybrid type of guy that just fits everything you want in an NFL corner. He's that guy that I think is going to be a star out of this class. I think it's a really great pick for Nick Cassero and the Texans. I really do like this pick. And I think, when you have so many needs, I think you go with who you think the best player available is. And clearly, I think they think it's Derek Stingley, and I don't fault them one bit for that. Now, though, I will say this, all 3 tackles on the board, could this potentially lead to Kenny Pickett not being picked by the Panthers if the right tackle is there at 6? One of the top 3 guys is going to be there at 6 for the Panthers if they want one. If they want to tackle, they're going to go tackle. If they want Kenny Pickett, they'll go Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, Nick Farabaugh, Karl Ludwig, Mike Asti here, our 2022 live NFL draft show. We're covering it all. We're talking about it all. And again, we're in this with you. It's unpredictable for us as well. And this wild ride will take us somewhere. It's going to be to the Steelers pick and a little bit beyond that. And we'll see about the rest of our coverage. Alan Saunders on location. He maybe will pop in and out as well. He has you all that written content throughout the Now family of networks as well for this draft. Now, Nick, we have hit the Jets pick. So they are a few minutes left on the clock. And this is the most interesting right now because this could set the tone for future picks in terms of, I guess there's still an off chance until we see pick is in that they were in rumors of actually trading for Deebo Samuels not long ago. I believe 24 hours ago. We talked about that actually on my show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. So what was that thought process? Would you do that, Karl or Nick? And how much does this affect the rest of the draft? Because obviously if they somehow punt this pick and there's some crazy trade going on, that changes the tenor. It's all defense to this point, and the quarterbacks aren't necessarily valued to be players going this high, but Nick did bring up Carolina's also one to watch. I would say this is the most interesting pick to this point because the other ones were kind of best available, and that was clear. This is a team that now has been in rumors of potentially trading for an all-pro, which obviously would mean they would lose this pick, and that would change the draft.
Tell you what, if San Francisco somehow acquires this pick or the 10th overall pick for that matter, the entire draft changes. Yeah. But this is also a franchise that has been in trade rumors with Mekhi Becton, their franchise left tackle, if you will. So tackle here makes sense. Ekwonu is like a Becton clone, essentially. So he makes a lot of sense here. To me, I also think, though, that there's a lot to look here. Thibodeaux's on the board. I think Sauce Gardner could be a pick. They need a corner really bad here. The Jets really need a cornerback. And so maybe the pick is Sauce Gardner. You don't think he's going to get to 10? or if you're trading away 10, if you're especially trading away 10 to try to get Thibodeaux, then you are 100% taking Sauce Gardner here. So I think those are your two guys. I think it's a Ekwonu or Sauce Gardner. That's my take.
Now, Karl, does anything that has happened or could happen impact any of the teams waiting in the wings? Carolina is that team that is the sexy conversation, because that is a team that could be going quarterback. They might just draft one of the quarterbacks. Maybe it's Malik Willis, who knows? That has been that team that no one really thought they were going to go 1 or 2, despite some crazy predictions months and months ago with Pickett. But that was the first team that really could get in there. Maybe the Jets as well. But does what the Jets do here affect teams after the Jets here, and how could it affect teams after the Jets? Jets pick is officially in here, so we're not seeing a trade off of this pick, but Nick did mention pick 10 certainly very much in play, and that depends on what they do here. But how much can this affect the rest of the board after this pick?
Right. Well, I mean, like Nick said, that the trading pick 10 for Thibodeaux would be the optimal move there. So if they want to go Sauce here, or they want to go anyone else, pick 10 is still there. It's a high profile pick there, but if they want to just buckle down here, go offensive line, there are every option on the board there. And if they do that, obviously Carolina is the next choice. I guess the Giants want to pick quarterback. They didn't. Daniel Jones didn't get his 5th-year deal there, but
right.
It does feel like if the Jets do go offensive line here, it could just be 3 straight offensive linemen here if the draft falls that way, because the Giants do need offensive linemen to help out anything on the offense. The offense is just a mess right now. The Panthers' offensive line is a huge need. And then it's the Giants again after that. So, I mean, it seems right for at least 2 offensive linemen to come off the board here.
Yeah, and maybe the Giants, who are coming up, learned their lesson of you draft a superstar running back, but you have no protection for him. Maybe they need to do the reverse. Maybe they need to make sure they protect their guy, because Saquon's dealt with injuries his whole career to this point, and has certainly been good when in there. The Jets pick is officially in. They're all slapping high fives. They're also a franchise that you bring up offensive line. They need a safe pick. I really feel like the Jets need to win on a pick, and that's certainly not always been the case for the Jets. Usually going line, they can be the safest picks. That's why some maybe thought the Steelers should have done that last year, but obviously they went Najee. And you see Goodell up there. I'm still a few seconds, but there you go.
So the pick is Sauce.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
2 corners in the top 4.
So you get 4 straight defensive players. You get 2 corners. You get back-to-back DNs, back-to-back corners. You mentioned that if the pick was Sauce, this means they're probably maybe doing something later. Does that now give you guys a thought process that clearly Baker is not a first-round guy? It does not appear that's happening in the first round. That appears more second, third round. I don't know if it's Debo or who it could be, but the Jets have another one right now at 10. The Giants are coming up here. You got Carolina coming up. There's some interesting picks coming up here. This is getting interesting now, but it's been all defense to this point and back-to-back corners. So I asked you if Stingley was going to make this a new trend or he was an anomaly, but now we get back-to-back corners in this draft. So this draft by itself is kind of an anomaly to this point.
I'll tell you what, 2 corners in the top 4. I don't know if that's ever happened in NFL history. I mean, this is truly a rare moment. You don't see it happen very often. But these are Sauce Gardner again. We kind of talked about this when the Jets were on the clock. Right. This now puts them in more position, I think, to get Thibodeaux. I really do. Because if you were not going to take Thibodeaux and you were saying, okay, we're going to stick at 10, I feel like you wouldn't take Sauce here. And so it's a good pick. I mean, Sauce has a lot of good things. Little bit stiff-hipped, so I think he's got some question marks, more question marks than the rest of the top 4 at the very least. But a fun player and a really nice pick here for the Jets. They needed that cornerback. He'll fit in there nicely. But this kind of does change how this board falls. Now you have all 3 tackles on the board at 5, which I don't know if anyone called happening. And you have Kayvon freaking Thibodeaux on the board at 5th overall. I mean, if you're the Giants here, and this is also, we've talked about the Steelers trading up to 7 potentially. If you're the Giants here, why wouldn't you take one of the tackles and then take Kayvon Thibodeaux?
Yeah, and trading for the Steelers, trading up to 7 would take a lot. I mean, that would be certainly a jump, but this would be a weird draft to maybe do it, and clearly that would show what the Steelers want to do and that they value a guy. Is this a surprise? Because I could say, have there been any surprises right now? Just the fact that it's back-to-back corners maybe is one. It's not like these are horrendous picks, but this is all defense. These are back-to-back corners. It maybe leads to believe what these teams are going to do later on. Is this a surprise pick? And then the Giants here on the clock. Should the Giants just go offensive line? I mean, what do the Giants do? They got another one coming up as well. This is New York City all day right now.
Oh, man, it's a tough one because it's going to be one of these tackles. It has to be. Now, it could be Kayvon Thibodeaux. Maybe that's what they're
I mean, one of the two picks has to be, I would imagine. Yeah.
I mean, they're probably thinking, okay, all three of the tackles are there.
Yeah, are they thinking they're safer now? Because they got 2 out of the next 3 picks.
That's what I'm thinking.
They basically can miss this pick and then get the next one. It's not.
I think they're gonna take Thibodeaux. That's my guess here. Is they're gonna take Thibodeaux because either one, Carolina could jump on him or some team could trade up to try and get him. But they still get one of the tackles at 7 regardless. It doesn't matter.
Would there be a thought if you're the Giants maybe even trading back now? Do you need to have 2 of the next 3 picks right now with the way the board has fallen?
I think with the way it's fallen, I think they're going to take Thibodeaux, and my guess is Thibodeaux and one of the 2 tackles. I'm thinking Cross probably is more likely. But yeah, this is interesting for the Giants because I don't think the Giants expected the board to fall like this. This is a dream scenario for New York. I mean, it really is. Yeah. Their 2 biggest needs are edge and tackle. I mean, that couldn't fall better for them. It couldn't fall better for the Giants.
Yeah, and the pick is in, as we now are to pick 5 in our NFL draft show, our live NFL draft show, of course, Pittsburgh Sports Live, Steelers Now. We're waiting for that Steelers pick at pick 20, unless they do something funky. And then, of course, all our coverage, if Kenny Pickett goes somewhere over there, Pittsburgh Sports Now, what happens with our college players as well. And, of course, any of you in the chat, and we do just see a lot of action here about just the surprise and just who they're surprised by and kind of talking and let's go to whatever team you're focusing on. But feel free to ask questions and comments. We can go at those as well here. And we now are at the Giants pick 5. So, Karl, I guess I'll pivot that back to you because I almost feel like that's what I would do maybe if I were the Giants right now. This board has fallen so much in their favor, as Nick is mentioning here. And I guess maybe it's obvious the pick is in. But is this a situation where if you're the Giants, maybe you do trade back? Or maybe you're able to now do something with that 7th pick. You get your guy here and you let a team trade up. If it's not the Steelers, what team maybe would trade up and that you could call? I almost maybe would be proactive in calling teams. Like, look, we don't necessarily need to have these 2 of these next 3 picks. Do you want to work with us?
I think with the 5th pick, whoever's there, who's your guy, you take him.
Okay.
And if you want to take calls in the pick after at 7, you can. But I think the value here is too good to pass up. Where there you can get a premier tackle and a premier edge rusher within 2 picks. I mean, I don't think you have to think too hard to just say we're in a good spot here. The board has fallen to us. Let's just take our guys, and that's a very good first round for us. I mean, you can get Kayvon Thibodeaux, you can get a Charles Cross, you can get Evan Neal or whoever you want at this point. And
well, that's what I mean. You do have so many options that you could move back a little bit and still be very happy with who you're getting. Right.
I would listen to calls if someone's calling, but I wouldn't go out there and say, okay, we have our guy. Let's go ahead and call around and look for more guys. Man, I think based on what you have here with who's left, I think it's a smart call to make this the easy call and just say, hey, we want this guy. We'll wait 5 minutes. We want this guy next. So we'll see what happens up here.
We do have our first bizarre moment on stage, I guess, of the draft at pick 5 as we get our kind of socially awkward raise the roof. but so this is our first non-football related comment that actually can be said here on the show. We kind of been mundane to this point as we're waiting here for the Giants' 5th overall pick that is in, and they will be back here very, very soon. This has kind of been the New York 10-minute block here of the draft with Carolina wedged in the middle. And this Vegas crowd, I got to say one thing. It's cool to get the draft here in Vegas. We're talking there. I almost was actually going to go. And I've been to other drafts in other locations, obviously coming off Cleveland. But I feel like this Vegas crowd could be more into this. I don't know.
It's a big crowd, but
it's a big crowd, yeah.
And so it's Kayvon Thibodeaux.
And there it is, yeah. So it ends up being Kayvon Thibodeaux. And you get the official announcement there as as the kid gets to make it there. So what does this do for their 7th pick? What does this do for them? What does this do for the rest of the draft? Do you D-end out of Oregon? We got 3 D-ends here in these top 5 and 2 corners going back to back. This has been all defense to this point. All defense to this point. I don't think that's too shocking, obviously. But still, this is not a draft with Trevor Lawrence or a major quarterback going early. So you have this being an all defensive draft, another D-end, another edge rusher, this one out of Oregon. Thoughts on this pick, and what does this do for 7?
This is, first of all, home run pick by the Giants. I love Kayvon Thibodeaux, so I think this makes perfect sense for them. And again, they're going to get their pick of one of the top 3 tackles at 7, so I don't think it matters to them. Now you look at Carolina, though. Whew, I'm going to be real, man. I can't see them going Kenny here unless they love Kenny like that much. You have to take a tackle. I mean, left tackle has been a problem for a decade in Carolina, in Charlotte. If you take anyone other than one of the top 3 tackles, I think you're doing a massive disservice to your roster. I really do. And Matt Rule's going to rail for Kenny. But Scott Fitterer, the GM, whose job is not on the line, but Matt Rules is, he's kind of a lame duck head coach. Yeah. Take the tackle. You're getting one of the top 3 tackles. Get yourself a franchise cornerstone. Take the tackle.
Is that I mean, nothing against Kenny Pickett, obviously, here. He certainly had a great college career, but is that a little bit of an indictment on the quarterbacks of this class now if you're advocating for that? Because obviously a head coach is going to be aligned with his quarterback. When you don't have an offensive line, it does make it harder on the quarterback, and Pickett is a guy that's going to need to be in a proper situation to have success. This isn't an Andrew Luck, Dan Marino, slam dunk, immediate walk on the field, change the franchise. He's going to need to be in the right situation. That was proven even at Pitt. You need to be in the right situation to have success. But is that a little bit of an indictment of the quarterback class if you're advocating almost going the opposite direction of what the Jaguars did? They got their QB built around him. You're looking to build around the QB first before you know who the QB is. You wouldn't do that if you love the QB draft class right now, and maybe you feel comfortable with the draft class next year being at least as good as this class. And if you're not really winning a championship right now, despite some pressure, maybe you do build it properly and just get a better QB or the same type of guy next year. But that has to indict this quarterback class a little bit if that's what happens.
Yeah, it is an indictment of the quarterback class. I would not be surprised, and I keep saying this, I would not be surprised if we don't see a quarterback go in the top 10. It's just not a great class. The top guy
some
in the
say
class,
top 15. I mean, some go beyond that. Yeah.
Like the top guy in the class is a complete wild card of a player, and he's from Liberty. I mean, I like Malik a lot. I think he's got great potential, but if he's the top quarterback in your class, it's not a great class. And Kenny, as safe as he is, as solid as he can be, the fact that he's even being talked about at 6 is an indictment on this class. Usually Kenny would be like a late first guy. And I think that's probably where he should go. And so Carolina, again, if you are smart here, take the tackle. Now, the pick is still not in, which leads me to believe there's either one of 2 things going on here. They're having a very heated debate about one of the tackles versus Kenny Pickett.
You want that to be the case so bad, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. Or this has been a team that has been talked about trading down a lot. Right. They could be getting phone calls here to potentially move off this pick. So we'll see which one it is. But I have a hard time seeing them trading down with all the tackles on the board unless they're moving down like 2 or 3 spots.
Well, wouldn't that – and Karl, I'm going to go to you here because you're our Pickett our Pickett guy, I guess, de facto Pickett guy over there from Pittsburgh Sports Now and our Now Network. You're all over the college sites. Obviously, Pickett a big part of that and covering him, and maybe continuing to cover him if he would be drafted by the Steelers over there at Steelers Now. But if there's so many tackles that you still could like, and you're going to have a quarterback not be taken because it's an indictment of the class. Number one, and I'm just pivot to you, that feels like to me, maybe to be devil's advocate, a reason why you could trade back a little bit because you're okay with any of these tackles and you're not going to take QB. Maybe that's right. Maybe that's wrong. But just in particular about Kenny Pickett, Karl, why are some saying Kenny Pickett can be taken here besides just the Matt Rule connection? Because that does feel like an overreach for a guy despite being a Heisman candidate. It's not like he's a perfect QB, even though maybe he's the most NFL ready of this bunch? And what are the hesitations that Nick's alluding to, that Nick's mentioning, that allow some to say, okay, maybe he's drafted here because of Matt Rule. Maybe he's just taken here because he's more NFL ready than Malik Willis, and it's a weird low value quarterback class, but he really shouldn't be. So the pros and cons of Kenny Pickett, who this is really his first opportunity that he might need to stay near the phone.
Right. Well, his biggest pro is Matt Rule. You can't really argue that. I mean, they have that connection. Matt Rule has been very, very vocal and very, very apparent in his interest in Kenny Pickett.
Right.
And that dates back a long time now, almost I guess more than 5 years now. So they have that bond. He is the most ready quarterback right now. He's a very versatile guy. He's a game manager who can come out here and he can play well in almost any system, but he is not a guy who'll come out here and win you games on his own. He's a guy who he'll need some help to win games in the NFL, and that's not a problem for him per se. That's just, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not a Josh Allen. He's a guy with a tool set that is built like a Mac Jones, like who can come into the right system.
Okay.
He can play well. He can guide the offense well. He can make the throws required of him. And if he doesn't turn the ball over, then they can win games most of the time. Is that Carolina right now? Probably not. I can't see him going in there and giving him a 10-win, 11-win season. It's just the offense isn't good enough. The defense isn't good enough. So I'm with Nick on this one. I think if you pass up on all three of these tackles to trade, if even you trade back a couple picks, what just at this point, don't overthink it. Pick the best guy on the board. Pick who. There's three top guys here. Just
yeah.
If there's one you like, pick them. If there's not, you can trade back, which might be the case, but probably not now. But
yeah, I mean the pick is in.
Just pick the guy you want. Yeah.
Yeah. The pick.
Just pick the tackle you want, and we can move on.
It could also be the one thing we haven't talked about yet is that could be surprising, is a surprising Malik Willis pick here. This is also the first spot Malik Willis come off the board.
True.
Yeah. I mean, if he's the number one rated quarterback in the class, even though it's widely believed that Kenny Pickett's more NFL ready, maybe a safer pick. I heard that from a lot of analysts I've had on shows. Malik Willis has maybe a higher ceiling, maybe more of a new age quarterback, where Kenny Pickett more prototypical. But if you feel like you don't want to wait around for the product that's Malik Willis and you're okay with Kenny Pickett, even though he's not the top QB of the class, maybe you do take him here. Maybe it is Matt Rule taking him here, and you do see Malik Willis, Liberty quarterback there. As you see him there in the green room, you see Kenny Pickett.
I don't know. I can't see QB going here.
Yeah, I mean, that would just be – I think the reason why, and this is what you guys have both mentioned, and this is the case, even though maybe you like Kenny Pickett because of your connection, and I do get a head coach doesn't get 3 or 4 years, maybe won't even be around next year to wait around for this. But for the franchise, you get the best available here. You need the tackle, no matter who your quarterback is, or it's not going to work for you. Tom Brady in his prime is not getting it done without protection there on that side. And then you're very, very likely to be able to get a quarterback as good or as NFL ready, maybe even more so, with maybe the same ceiling next year if you're picking in a similar situation, or maybe even back further in the draft if you win a few more games this year. And it's not like they're all of a sudden going to be picking 29. I don't think anyone predicts that type of year out of the Panthers this year, but their pick is in.
So it's Ekwonu.
So they don't go quarterback. You don't see either one of the quarterbacks there. They go offensive tackle. They do kind of go safer.
And that's expected.
Yeah.
Charlotte native. And so it's a nice marriage there. Charlotte native and Ekwonu. Big time, real powerful guy. Again, they needed this guy. They needed this franchise left tackle. They have Taylor Moton at right tackle. Get a guy to pair with them at right tackle. The quarterbacks just didn't make sense. When you had the short thing at tackle, and that is such a valuable position, you needed that. And so this makes a lot of sense to me. Ekwonu is a nice pick for them. He'll be a stud for them. Makes so much sense. And now for this board so far, I think has fallen very nicely for the Steelers.
I was going to go there. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I think now the more you look at it, right, the Seahawks need a tackle. What if one of the 3 tackles is there at 9? They're going to take a tackle. So the only team you're going to have to worry about now, if he gets past Seattle, is New Orleans. And
right.
And now that becomes a lot more easier if, say, you want to move up, lot cheaper to move up in front of New Orleans than it is in front of Seattle or Atlanta. And this is really where it's moving for Pittsburgh right now. Is there's a real possibility as we kind of come down the home stretch, there could be only one quarterback off the board for the Steelers, and they might be able to sit at 20. And really, who knows who the Saints like the most? If they like Kenny or Ritter more than Malik, like it ain't that crazy. I'm just saying, I don't think it's that crazy with how the board's fallen to say Malik Willis falls all the way to 20.
Yeah, he could fall the way to 20. Or if the other scenario exists where he's taken by the Saints, then you're the Steelers. And I don't know if this is doomsday or this is just maybe you like to watch the world burn, or this makes us kind of excited covering the team because you're going to get polarizing discussion. And it's going to be talked about. It is very likely the Pittsburgh Steelers, if Malik Willis is taken by the Saints, he would be the only taken prior to the quarterback taken prior to the Steelers. And then the Steelers are going to have to decide, do they pass on Kenny Pickett and take another quarterback? And it might be the better decision. It absolutely might be. They've talked to Ryder a lot. I know they also think highly of Ryder. They might do that. It's not like they're going to take Pickett just because he went to Pitt. They're going to take the best guy, obviously. But imagine the commentary, the pressure that'll be there, the polarizing effect that will be there. And on that guy in particular, certainly if Pickett has a better career, this will be it seems very likely, Nick, as unpredictable as this draft has been coming in. I think part of why you're so excited, why I'm so excited, why many are excited, and the way the board's falling right now, there's a high potential for those of us who cover the Steelers or fans of the Steelers. This will be a draft decision that is talked about for decades. It really could be. I mean, this is not going to be an easy decision. Kevin Colbert's final decision may be the decision he is most remembered for, one way or the other, fair or unfair.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge pick for the Steelers. And again, at the way it's falling, quarterback is more and more likely, in my opinion, as we continue to go down the top 10. Yeah. I really think, though, this is going to define thing. Whether you pass up on the quarterback, right, for another position, or you take said quarterback. Because there's going to be a quarterback, if you sit at 20, that's there that you could have taken. And if that quarterback ends up being really good, well, you have a Lamar Jackson, Terrell Edmonds situation all over again, except it's probably worse. So that's the thing. The indecision to not draft a quarterback can be criticized, or the decision to draft the wrong quarterback. And of course, you can be obviously praised as well if you hit on the quarterback. So it's going to be a huge franchise changing moment here. And the question is going to be whether you kick the can down the road another year or you decide to fix it right now.
Yeah, I think to say the least. And I mean, they're obviously going to think of this board falling favorably to them because they kind of can make that whatever decision they would want. Karl, and you have the Giants pick is in here. So we're going to wait a second, we'll talk, but we'll wait a second here for the Giants pick. The Giants pick is in here after the Carolina's pick. This Giants with 2 here in the first 7. So a lot of defensive players, basically been all defense except for here a tackle going Atlanta, Seattle. So you have some teams, and Seattle could be a team that's brought up maybe for quarterback. We have some teams maybe that would like quarterback here coming up. What's the difference for you, Karl, as somebody who's covered and watched Kenny Pickett so much? And obviously we got to talk Kenny Pickett pretty heavily. Obviously we cover Pitt, we cover the college scene, we cover the Steelers. So the possibility is there, but just in general about him, what's the difference of taking Kenny Pickett versus any of the others not named Malik Willis? So this hypothetical scenario where Malik Willis is the only quarterback gone, and like Nick's saying, the Steelers sit there at 20, or even if they trade up 1 or 2 spots, and they have a chance to pick any of the other quarterbacks and have the pick of the litter. What do you do? I'm going to get to that actually after we get here. Evan Neal, offensive tackle there, again, out of Alabama. So
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, so again, they're doing what they have to do. They're kind of building around. They're adding the protection there. What they didn't do years ago for Saquon, and obviously Alabama players on the line usually are studs. So that's hard to be a negative pick. They don't do any trading out like some would have thought. So I'm going to put a pin in my question to you here. Nick, just give me an analysis of this pick here of Neal to the Giants.
I'm telling you right now, the Giants win the draft, whatever happens next. How Kayvon Thibodeaux and Evan Neal as your first 2 picks at 5 and 7. You want to talk about home runs. On some of these guys' boards, you're going to be able to see them as top 3 players. I mean, these are 2 guys that were talked about as the first overall pick as early as, last month. So like this is incredible value for New York. It's a great pick for them. And again, this is such a home run for New York. Great pick by them. They now protect Daniel Jones and they get an elite edge rusher. Two of the most valuable positions in the sport. Can't really substitute it. It's a really great job here by the Giants. And here's what they've done. Daniel Jones might not be the answer there. So next year when they're ready to maybe get their quarterback, they're walking into a really nice situation.
Yeah, instead of reaching for a quarterback, like we cautioned teams at the start of the show, that if you don't love a quarterback, you don't want to reach for a quarterback because, for example, that could set your franchise back years and years and years. Daniel Jones was not graded to be taken where he was taken by the Giants. They reached for him. That was a controversial pick at the time. Had that Eli Manning mold maybe, but not even as mobile. So that's not really worked out to this point, even though he's had his moments. It doesn't appear like he is there for the long haul, which would make that a swing and a miss pick. But now they're doing the safer route. So whether it is him that can play better this coming year and figure something out, he's now going to be more protected and maybe Saquon will be healthier. And if it's not him, you're still building properly around whoever it's going to be that you figure is equal or better than him in the future and kind of fix what you did years ago when you did reach for Daniel Jones. So that makes tons of sense. The Falcons are currently on the clock. As we wait for the Falcons, Karl, I want to take that pin out of the question here and go back to what I asked you. If Nick's hypothetical scenario exists and Malik Willis is the only quarterback taken prior to the Steelers picking, say by the Saints or wherever, and you are deciding between Kenny Pickett, Ryder, Howell, whoever you want, you have your pick of the litter. What is your decision? What do you think the Steelers are going to do? Because that then is the decision of all decisions, good or bad, right or wrong, that will be discussed for decades. If they go Pickett and he ends up as the next Dan Marino, it would be retribution for what they didn't do 40 years ago. If they pass again and you're looking at another Hall of Fame career and your guy isn't that good, that's going to be criticized forever. So that is a very topical, that'll be a very thought out decision for the Steelers. They may already have in their minds, but if it's Willis gone and you have a chance at all the other QBs, what do you do and how does Pickett mix in with those?
Right. Well, I mean, Willis appears to be the main choice here, and he's the highest upside guy, which is makes sense. But like other than Kenny Pickett chose the right year to have his career year.
Sure.
I mean, the coming of the year was Spencer Rattler was the number one pick in the draft, and we all saw what happened to him this year with him moving on to South Carolina now. But Sam Howell was a top guy; he's fallen down. Matt Corral, he had a major injury in his bowl game. Pickett just happened to have an incredible season at the right time with him breaking out as a guy who has all like the intangible traits to lead a team, but he also has a strong enough arm. He's not a statue in the pocket. He can move. He has the poise and the accuracy to lead a team, and that's everything a team wants in a leader. That's what he can offer a team right now, and it just happened to come in a year where the top guys kind of stumbled a bit. The guys behind him never really kind of picked it up, and he just happened to be in that right place at the right time. And if the Pittsburgh wants a quarterback and it's not Malik Willis, it's gonna be Kenny Pickett, and if it's not Kenny Pickett, then it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that could be. Although they've certainly talked to Ryder and other QBs as well, but that it'll definitely be a criticized pick if it's not Kenny Pickett. He falls to you there, Nick. The Falcons pick is in here, and obviously they kind of need to retool. It's a new era of Falcon football. They're here. They no longer have Matt Ryan. He's in Indianapolis. They trade. They get this selection here. They kind of need to retool receiver-wise as well. Gone is Julio Jones, gone is Calvin Ridley, who was suspended. What should they do here? What do they do here? Is this where we see an offensive player who's a weapon, who's not just an offensive tackle, finally go off the board?
Yeah, we do. It's Drake London from USC, which is interesting. I think receiver is a very defendable move here. Just they need one so bad. They did not only did Calvin Ridley get suspended, or they would have traded him, but they lost Russell Gage too, which is just a bad combo. Really, it's just Kyle Pitts, and now you add Drake London to the mix. Drake London's not my wide receiver one or anything, but he's a good player, and you kind of get to see it because he's a former basketball player. He's a guy that really translates that to the field. 6'4", just wins above the rim super well, super physical, has really good agility though, and can run routes really well. Going to be a big vertical threat in this offense. He's a really nice fit with what they want to do. And he's going to be their wide receiver one. Drake London's a really good player, man. I mean, you see some of his highlight reel plays. This guy makes some unbelievable contested catch grabs that you just don't see many guys be able to make. And so he's the rare big guy that's 6'4" that can move like he's 5'11". He's a big guy, as I say, and I like to say this saying, he's a big guy that can do little guy things. And I think that's what makes him really special as a prospect. And he still has those big guy traits. Just not many guys are going to beat him above the rim.
A big guy can do little guy things. I like that. I may steal that. And that's perfect because that shows you have the body, but you also have the athleticism and the ability. And you say he's not a wide receiver one. I do feel like if you're taking a guy at the 8th overall pick, though, you're probably hoping he's a wide receiver one, and they need to find a wide receiver one. They had a wide receiver one who a Hall of Fame guy for so many years. You lose who the guy maybe is stepping up underneath him as well with the suspension to Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley not there, and then you're losing your QB. You're going to need a QB. You're going to need some line help to be able to help a receiver like this, but receivers can impact you right away. So it's an interesting move. If he doesn't become more than a 2, I don't know how this will be criticized, though. But what I do want to ask you, Nick, here, and I do have some chat activity now asking for this, and we're now several picks in, a lot of defense, a lot of edge rushers. You see an offensive tackle. You see this receiver now. You see the back-to-back corners. That's rare and may never have happened there in the first few picks. Reset the board. Forget Steelers, forget anything else right now. Give me your best available players right now that are left in this draft. Maybe, best available, top 2, 3, 5, whatever you can give me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few guys here that make sense. Kyle Hamilton is still on the board, the excellent safety from Notre Dame. He has to be at the top of that board, regardless of where we go. So I think he's there. I think Charles Cross, the tackle from Mississippi State, is here as well. Really special player is Charles Cross. So he makes sense. I think Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher from Florida State, is up here. I think Andrew Booth Jr., the cornerback from Clemson, is here as well. And then I think you have, if I'll give you a top 5, I think the last guy in that 5, I can give you a few guys like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, or Jameson Williams, but Jordan Davis, the nose tackle from Georgia.
I was going to bring up actually Davis if you didn't mention him because that's where the chat's going. Most of the chat activity actually. There's even some chatters that are saying Jordan Davis is the best available right now, left on the board. Why are you having some hesitation on Davis? Because you have him down there barely getting in your top 5. It seems like others are rating him much higher. And I know that Mike actually on our show had him as a can't miss guy that maybe he'd even consider trading up for if you don't want a quarterback. If say you're the Steelers, you don't seem to be as sold on him.
Oh, I like him. I just don't have him higher than Kyle Hamilton and some of these other guys. Okay. I think he's a really good player, but he is a nose tackle that still has to work on his pass rush chops. Not that he can't collapse the pocket, but he's just not polished as a pass rusher just yet. So he's this massive space eater of a run defender, an elite run defender right away, but which is really valuable. But you also, at that nose tackle position, do need to rush the passer a little bit more now. So early on, he'll probably be more of a 2-down guy, but I think he's got all the potential with the athleticism, just elite athleticism, to grow into that 3-down guy. You just have to kind of churn it out a little bit. I think he's a little bit rawer than, say, Kyle Hamilton is at safety, than Jermaine Johnson is at edge, when Charles Cross is at offensive tackle. But listen, Jordan Davis is a top 15 player in this class, and he's going to be a really good player. And so there's a place I think he could land. I think Baltimore is where he could land. And I'm telling you right now, if you're a Steelers fan, you better hope Jordan Davis doesn't land in the Ravens' hands, because you want to talk about Haloti Ngata 2.0. This guy's going to be maybe even better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a thought the Steelers could, and this has almost not been discussed enough, but could trade up a little bit? So go from 20 to 17, 15, trade up a little bit for someone that's not a quarterback? And if that is the case, would it maybe be a Davis in terms of where the board would be at that point?
Yeah, I think Davis and Hamilton are two of those guys that if you're not trading up for a quarterback, I think those are two guys that have to stick out like a sore thumb. You need the safety guy because, Terrell Evans is on a 1-year deal. So very possible you could look at a guy like Kyle Hamilton and move up for him. And then there's also the idea that Jordan Davis is this massive space here. You don't know what's going on with Stephon Tuitt. And I think those are the two guys you look at and you say immediately, they're the two guys. If you're not trading up for a quarterback, you're trading up for. So I would name those two guys. as your trade up candidates if you're not trading up for the quarterbacks?
It would be controversial, to say the least, though, if the Steelers trade up for someone who's not a quarterback and they don't come out of the first round with a QB. Although, again, if you don't love your guy, if you don't love any of these QBs, maybe you do ride a bridge of Mitch Trubisky for a year or so, feel like your win total is not going to really change, and then you try it again in a future draft and you kind of build around. Because none of these QBs that you have right now that you're going to be drafting, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Ryder, etc., none of them are going to be starting for you week one if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're going to give it to Mitch Trubisky, you'd imagine, or whatever competition exists with Mason Rudolph. So maybe that is a thought process too. Maybe they're not in love with one of those guys and they do go into a safer pick and then try again next year. That could be a thing. If you're not in love with the QB and you swing and miss at a QB or reach for a QB, like we brought up with the Giants earlier from years ago, you do set your franchise back for years and further than any other position would get you. So more and more years back than any other position would get you if you do swing and miss. Nick Farabaugh, Karl Ludwig, Mike Asti here, our 2022 live NFL draft show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Steelers Now. We already have some coverage over there. Steelers Now from Alan Saunders. So we may hear from him at some point, probably after the Steelers pick, if that does occur. But nonetheless, there's some written coverage over there at Steelers Now. And certainly if Pickett is taken, whether it be by the Steelers or another team, you'll have that coverage over there at Pittsburgh Sports Now. And we'll be waiting a bit, I'd imagine, for some Penn State players and West Virginia players at Nittany Sports Now and WV Sports Now and all of our coverage throughout the Now family of networks as well. Karl, Seattle has their pick in right now. Obviously, they trade with the Broncos and they trade Russell Wilson. They kind of pick Pete Carroll over Russell Wilson in the possible drama that existed there. Russell Wilson, who secretly kind of wanted out for 2 years and has had to do a lot to carry a team that didn't have tons around him through different eras of Seahawks football. He does now get himself out of there in Denver. Thoughts on the Seahawks, what they should do, what they will do here? Is this an undercover opportunity that a QB could go here, even though they think maybe they have at least a starter as a bridge? But do they really have the future? They certainly don't have the next Russell Wilson.
Right. Well, I mean, they have Drew Lock now, but he obviously isn't the answer. But I mean, yeah. I don't think I doubt the QB here is the pick. I think in trading Russell Wilson, you're kind of committing to rebuild here. So I think it's more of just the best player available. So it could be at this point, it could be anyone on the board. It could be a Charles Cross. It could be Kyle Hamilton. It could be anyone. So I would be very surprised if it was Malik Willis or a Kenny Pickett, but we're gonna find out here.
Yeah, and then obviously the Jets and Washington to follow, as we do have the Seahawks pick is in.
Charles Cross.
And there it is. Yep, Charles Cross. Yeah. Again, another tackle there, Mississippi State. So we started out with defense. Now you're getting a lot of safer picks. What does this again do for the board? It felt like they still needed to get that franchise QB, but Nick, does this again point to an indictment of this quarterback class? Because this is a team that they have a QB, but they don't have a quarterback for the future. They have other needs. They clearly are rebuilding. They're moving on from an era of a Hall of Fame quarterback who still has years to go and will be playing in the NFL. So it's not like he retired. So this feels like a situation where you're building for the future. You're getting a safer pick. You're kind of punting on the QB position for the future right now, and you're still dealing with the bridge situation that I don't think anyone's sold on. And you're basically saying to yourself, we're not going to win right now. We'll probably be back here trying again in the draft in a similar position next year. But if you love these QBs and everybody was NFL ready, and it was one of those years where it was a slam dunk QB situation, you take a QB here, I would think, and certainly maybe even they would already be off the board.
And again, this board has fallen really well because it hasn't forced any of these quarterback needy teams that could take a quarterback but don't need a quarterback, right? A lot of these quarterback needy teams have bridges in place. And that's the thing that's kind of unique about this year. No one needs a quarterback. And there's also the option of Baker Mayfield or Jimmy G out there on the market. So there's that too. You don't necessarily need
Jimmy G's injury, does that, maybe takes him out of it a little bit.
It complicates it, but let's be real here. There are options. And the way the board has fallen for the top three tackles to not come off the board until 9, you have given the option for these quarterback need teams to go with the BPA at another dire position of need, an important position of need. So they haven't had the incentive to reach on Kenny or Malik or Ritter or Corral or whoever you might think goes this early. They've not had the incentive. So of course the quarterbacks are falling down the board. And now you almost look at some of these other teams like Philadelphia, Houston, someone like that might be a quarterback needy type of team that doesn't need someone necessarily, because you have Jamison Nola and you have Jalen Hurts in Philly and Davis Mills in Houston. But if one of these quarterbacks is still there and there's no quarterbacks off the board, now you're talking about one of these teams thinking, okay, maybe we take a chance on them because we didn't expect this to happen.
And you had the Packers going buck wild for Jordan Love. So you have maybe a scenario like that could occur again if maybe one of these teams, as you're mentioning, no one really needs, and this includes the Steelers actually, no one really needs a quarterback for this particular season right now because you have your bridge and you could feel comfortable dipping your toes back in the water next year and feeling like you're going to get a similar guy. So that is the issue for the QBs right now. That was the reason why Seattle didn't go QB. But if you're another team who maybe would say, okay, that's the case, but I'm just going to take one right now. I'm going to do it because I like the guy enough and I can land Malik Willis, put him on the roster, don't have to worry about it for next year, and I can wait for that ceiling to eventually be reached and laugh at teams in the future. That possibility now exists, but really otherwise, I feel like there's almost no chance the Steelers are not going to have an opportunity at one of their top three quarterbacks picking at 20.
It really feels like that, man. It really feels like that. One of the top three are going to be there, whether that's Kenny, whether that's Ritter, or whether that's Malik, or sheesh. I mean, with the way it could fall, we could have all three of them there. The Steelers could, like, that is a distinct possibility. The Steelers could be the first team to pick a quarterback in this draft. Like, that could happen. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I think you're going to see a team maybe try and snipe the Steelers at 20, maybe, a Detroit. I think the team to watch here that no one's talking about is Tennessee. I think they're in an interesting spot where Ryan Tannehill hasn't gotten them past the divisional round in the playoffs. They went to the AFC Championship. He hasn't gotten them over that hump.
Sure.
And the contract isn't great, but if they think right and they like, a guy enough, they like Malik enough, they like Kenny enough, they like whoever it might be enough, Ritter, it could be like one of those scenarios where we could see one of these teams come up and really surprise the heck out of you. I think they're the surprise lurking team that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and that's what happened with the Jordan Love scenario. Kind of the Packers kind of lurked out of nowhere and pissed off Aaron Rodgers, and we ended up in drama for a couple of years. But yeah, that kind of is a possibility here. The Jets pick is in. It does not, again, feel like the Jets are trading for Debo, I guess, but they're still doing their thing here with these couple picks here in the early round of the draft. And then, of course, you have Washington and Minnesota, and Minnesota's not going quarterback, obviously. So this still does line up for the Steelers to have many choices at QB. And in the chat, I think I'm going to agree. I hope every QB is on the board when the Steelers pick so we really can see who they like the best. And yeah, I don't think that's going to happen where they're all going to be there. But Nick and Karl, that would end the debates of the past 4 months. All the conversation, all the shows, all the commentary. If you want a polarizing situation, there it is. That would be the ultimate test for Mike Tomlin. Do you go with the guy he's most in love with that's likely has a higher ceiling but is a little bit of a project? Do you go most NFL ready? Do you take the Pitt guy? Do you pass on the Pitt guy? We do see the Jets pick there. It could be all there for the Steelers.
Could be. And that's such an intriguing thing. Again, I take Willis if I'm taking the quarterbacks. I'm betting on upside, man. I'm betting on it. I think you have to bet on the upside, but especially at 20, I mean, you don't have to move any picks to get Malik Willis in the wild card that he is. I think you have to do it. That's just my kind of thought of it. Meanwhile, the Jets just picked Garrett Wilson. Right. And if you are a fan of receivers round one, I don't think you're going to get one of them. But Garrett Wilson's a really nice pick here for the Jets. Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. I'll say this, that's a way to win for yourself. You help out Zach Wilson a little bit, you get the top corner. I think Joe Douglas knows what he's doing out there in New York. I really do.
Yeah, so the Jets have some hope. First time in a while that would have been said in a draft show.
Interesting. So the Saints have just moved up to 11.
And that also does show with Washington was on the clock there. So the Saints move up. They take the Washington selection at 11. It's an interesting spot to move up to, Nick, because if you're doing that to get, say, Malik Willis or a QB, you didn't have competition with Minnesota.
No, you did have competition, however, with the Steelers. This is
so does this lead you to believe they thought the Steelers were going to possibly trade up?
Yep. I think the Steelers were looking to trade up here, and Washington figured, well, there's no reason for us to take the Steelers pick because we don't have to move back 5 instead of 9. And the question is here, this could easily not be for a quarterback. The receivers are coming off the board fast.
Sure.
I don't be shocked if this is for like Jameson Williams. Like,
if this is not for a quarterback, that almost guarantees the Steelers are getting at least 2 of their top 3 guys, and they're basically going to have that. Almost guarantees to me they're making the Pickett decision. They're going to be in a controversial decision that a 30 for 30 will be made out of. I don't know if they secretly want that or secretly don't want that. It depends on where they're going to go. But what we've been waiting for is likely going to be very much in front of them if this is not a QB.
If this is not a QB, I'm telling you, it's Jameson Williams or Kyle Hamilton. They need a safety too. Could be him.
If it's a QB, is it Willis or no QB? Is that kind of the situation here?
I don't think so. I think that I've always gotten the impression that New Orleans is a Pickett Ritter lean more than a Willis lean. I don't think Willis.
Could you go further into detail on why that would be then?
Willis is more about attacking outside the numbers, but that's not what the Saints do. The Saints attack all inside. Like, the Saints are a short to intermediate throwing team, and Malik has a lot of inconsistencies hitting those layups, and so does Ritter. So, if they're trading up for a quarterback, though, it's going to be for Ritter or Pickett because they move through the middle of the field so much. They work through progressions at the second level so much, but not the third level as much, and they value playing in the pocket a lot more than most teams do. And Malik doesn't do that a ton. Pickett and Ritter do that. So if they're trading up for a quarterback, the fit is Ritter or Pickett. And now Sean Payton's gone, but Pete Carmichael is a disciple of Sean Payton. He is a very close disciple of Sean Payton. So I would expect this to be, if it's a quarterback, this is going to be Desmond Ritter or Kenny Pickett. That's my guess.
Okay. And Karl, it does feel like the Saints need a quarterback. If they don't go quarterback, that could possibly be criticized as well because they do need a quarterback. If they don't go quarterback, that really feels like an indictment of this class. They do certainly need quarterback. As Nick mentioned, you lose Sean Payton. He is no longer there. He's quote unquote retiring and kind of waiting in the wings to when he's going to come back. But you lose a Hall of Fame head coach, you lose a Hall of Fame quarterback now. You're in a whole new era of Saints ball. You're looking for the guy to lead you through the going to be wilderness likely. Your offensive system might be similar. Maybe Pickett and Ryder fit that more than Willis, even if Willis maybe fits the culture, like some are arguing, or maybe the higher ceiling is there. I'm going to ask you this. What kind of fit would the Saints be for Kenny Pickett in particular? Because it does feel like the Saints are a team that has been rumored to be liking him for a while, in addition to, say, the Steelers and others. What kind of fit would this be?
I mean, if the Saints want to win now, then Kenny Pickett's their guy. I mean, he could step in today, and if they're not comfortable with Jameis Winston, he could jump in right now and lead the offense and do pretty well probably. I mean, he's a guy who's built for that kind of system, like Nick was saying. And if it turns out that he is the guy going here the Saints have now made an investment to make sure that he is their guy, and I can't see him really. I mean, if he comes in and he can prove what he is and what he's done in the past isn't a fluke, and he can show himself as a legit NFL player, I can't see him not playing this year for the Saints. I mean, I think he'll do well. I mean, he's got all the tools. He's got the leadership, the decision making, the arm strength to make throws across the field, across the middle of the field to the edges. I mean, he's a guy who would do well in the Saints system. So if this is who they want, I think he'll play this year quite a bit.
Okay, yeah, and Jameis Winston.
The pick is now in too. So
yeah, the pick is in. The pick is in, and this could be a tone setter for the draft, as Nick and I were talking about.
And so the terms of the trade are 1698, 120. So still have 19, which is expected, but they still have 19.
Yeah.
My prediction is this is going to be Jameson Williams, and then they're going to circle back at 19 and take Ritter or Pickett. That's what I think ends up happening.
And I had to laugh because if the Steelers sit at 20 and Pickett goes in front of them, we're never going to know what they were going to do. And I really want to find a way to know what they were going to do, because the first question is going to be, would you have taken Pickett if he was still there or would the Steelers, you mentioned it though, when we were saying they didn't have to worry about Minnesota or these other teams, why trade up to 11? If they're not going QB here and the pick is in, and they do what you're saying, there's a risk there. The Steelers could trade up only a couple spots and take the QB that maybe they want. And I will get, by the way, to our chat question here, because there's a lot of activity in the chat, by the way, about the Steelers maybe taking somebody who's not a quarterback, even if they sit at 20 and the QBs are there, and whether or not they should do that. Pick is in here.
Let's see. This is going to be a fascinating pick to me. I think it's going to be a receiver. I think Jameson Williams makes the most sense. So that's my guess.
Trading up for him, though, is something here with all these quarterbacks on the board. This is a real indictment of this QB class. It doesn't matter once you get into the league. They're all going to get in the league and they can show something. But this shows you the slam dunk guy's not there, or these guys would have been off the board already, and certainly would happen here.
Got some theatrics, too.
You got some theatrics. This is the first time in a while. I feel like we're missing the theatrics. We have such an unpredictable draft here. I need more theatrics here. You're in Vegas. I'm happy to get some theatrics. We got some two AFC West fans here as the Saints are about to pick, but that's fine.
They do drag out the picks. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I believe
I love Tony Gonzalez too, but geez.
Yeah. Tony there. Yeah. I don't know if Saints fans are too thrilled with him. I don't think they love Tony Gonzalez that much.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting pick because this is going to set the tone.
And this is dragging it out, to say the very, very least. There we have Tony G up now on the stage. This is really the first opportunity since the Panthers that Kenny Pickett really could go legitimately, or a quarterback could maybe even go legitimately. This might be longer to actually announce the pick than actually to make the pick.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
I don't want to transition topics here for anyone who wants to go behind the curtain of a radio host, because we got to have a pick here that's a big deal. But Tony's killing me right now.
Good Lord. Okay, I've seen the pick on Twitter. You just want to announce it?
Go ahead.
Chris Olave, wide receiver, Ohio State.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Good pick.
Is it a good pick because of the player and because of the position, or is it a controversial pick since they didn't go QB?
I think it's a pick that Saints fans will be fine with. You don't give up a super lot, and more importantly, you actually end up with a really good player too at a desperate position of need. You need a receiver. And I think they kind of felt like, yeah, we're not going to get a receiver at 16 that we like. And maybe they're not comfortable with Jameson Williams' ACL. And if they really like Olave that much, it makes complete sense to me for Olave to come here off the board. So I don't think it's a critical one. I think I think they have their guy. It's Pickett or Ritter. So yeah. Also, here's something for you guys that's crazy. The Vikings have just traded the 12th overall pick to the Detroit Lions.
That's probably quarterback. We're right. Okay. Yeah.
And see,
folks, this is Malik Willis.
This goes to exactly what you were saying, Nick, about one team sitting there saying, wow, no quarterback's been taken. No one's in love with a QB that needs a QB. They have their bridges. They're fine with their bridges. They're going to dip back in next year. So we're just going to do it. And we're going to bite a bullet and waiting for a team to do that. And that might be Detroit right here. Obviously, they do need a QB. And Minnesota made complete sense to trade back because they did not need to sit there with plenty of other positions.
So Detroit traded 32, 34, and 66 for 12 and 46. Interesting.
If they don't go QB, who is this for Detroit, and how could that possibly then make sense?
It has to be Kyle Hamilton. It has to
Okay.
be. I don't know who else it would be. I mean, maybe Jameson Williams would be the pick here, where the receivers just come off the complete board. I could see them wanting a receiver. They do need one outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. They don't have much there, but they also need a safety. So Kyle Hamilton makes sense. But Malik Willis, it does feel like is the pick here. I think so.
Now, why does Malik Willis fit Detroit better than the other quarterbacks? Because we've talked about how Pickett or Ryder would fit with the Saints more than Willis. We talked about how Willis has more of a ceiling. The other guys, maybe certainly Pickett, are more NFL ready. The fit is a big deal. It's an underrated thing that when you're discussing quarterbacks, whether it be a rookie or a Hall of Famer, you got to have the right fit or you're not going to go anywhere. But why would Willis fit with Detroit, knowing that he's still a bit of a ceiling and they're years away? He's not as NFL ready right now.
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, he's walking into a prime bridge situation with Jared Goff, so he doesn't have to play right away.
Right.
But they also really like to open up the passing game. Dan Campbell's all about, I know he's a Peyton disciple and everything, but he's all about explosive plays. And so I think Malik Willis fits what they want there. And I think they really want to open things up. Now, explosive plays with Malik Willis is going to be what his MO is. So that makes the most sense to me, but we'll see who they come up here for. I'm kind of expecting it to be Malik Willis because I just think the fit there is natural. Comes from a similar offense, a shotgun heavy offense, fits a lot of what they do in the same route tree too. RPO heavy, makes a lot of sense.
Going to the chat to entertain the chat here a bit here. There are some that are arguing in the chat that the Steelers, if Kyle Hamilton was there for the Steelers, they should go Hamilton instead of QB.
Yeah.
Reaction to that conversation?
I'm going to be real with you. I kind of agree. I kind of agree. Hamilton versus Willis is a really interesting conversation, but I think here's the thing. If you're Pittsburgh, it's setting up for a scenario where you're not going to have another opportunity ever to sit at 20th overall and get the quarterback you want. I'm just saying, that's not going to happen in any other draft other than this. It's not going to happen next year. It's probably not going to happen the year after that. Next year, you have two legitimate quarterbacks right now that look like first rounders in CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. And you have a ton of other guys, Will Levis, Tyler Van Dyke, and a ton of others that I'm not going to name.
Right.
But it's very rare to get the opportunity to pick one now. And if they like the guy enough, they're going to take him at 20. I personally, and this is me personally, I would take Hamilton. But I think the Steelers would take the quarterback.
I think the Steelers are going to take the quarterback as well, but it does bring up an interesting conversation with Hamilton or even Davis. There are options with the way this board is falling that the Steelers not only are going to have their pick of the litter for quarterbacks that could be polarizing, they may have the really controversial decision of taking none of the quarterbacks, really indicting the class. And then, Nick, if the Steelers would do that, I'm not saying these quarterbacks aren't going to have a chance of success in the NFL, but just based on the rookie class draft value and where they're taken just right away for the draft retrospective, this could be one of the worst quarterback classes of all time based on where they're taken, certainly the money they're going to be making and where they're going to have a chance at to have success in the National Football League. Of the Steelers, if you have one quarterback taken in front of the Steelers or none, and the Steelers don't go QB, you're looking at max one quarterback, maybe two taken in the entire first round, and Pickett could get out of the first round and go into the second round and be a second round pick, which would be a slide for a guy that some thought first overall months ago, as crazy as that now sounds.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. It definitely is possible here. And by the way, I'm also going to respond to Nick. You'll find this funny. We actually do have some chat activity where some are saying, please don't spoil the picks from Twitter.
Okay.
Guys, I'm going to respond to you with this. Try hosting a draft show that you can't prepare for, and they take 20 minutes to announce the pick. So yes. I'm not going to apologize.
Well, it's the only one that I wanted to do. If they just do it in a timely manner, we'll be good. But the Lions just surprised the heck out of me. Jameson Williams, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So again, are we talking further indictment of quarterbacks? When's the first quarterback going? I mean, those questions are still there. And I guess thoughts on this pick. It's another wide receiver. This is a great wide receiver. This is a solid wide receiver. Some could argue, I honestly think, maybe even best receiver in this draft. Certainly Alabama has that lineage. This could be the guy. They've been elevating QBs there rather than vice versa. But to trade up to get a receiver, we've now seen multiple trades up for teams that have a bridge at best or don't have a quarterback really at all in terms of the future and don't go QB.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, say, what you have here now on the board and say the first team likely to take them, it's probably Saints. I mean, maybe a team comes up like Tennessee, but again, this is a clear indictment on the quarterback class, man.
Yeah.
It straight up is. I mean, no one thinks this quarterback class is worth the picks. It's straight up like that. And again, that
could include the Steelers. Could include the Steelers.
It could. And that would be the turn of the century. If Malik Willis is on the board and what if Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, and Desmond Ridder are on the board and they just say, nope.
That's just like a heel turn. That is that just Ric Flair with a low blow? I mean, that would be, and that would be the most polarizing decision possibly, because if you do that, Mitch Trubisky better be good next year and Kenny Pickett better suck.
And not only Kenny Pickett, you better hope Ridder and Willis suck too, because if you get the choice of the litter at 20 and you don't take that quarterback, man, you better have, and that guy you draft better be the real deal too. And again, this is where the Kyle Hamilton scenario kind of comes into the scenario. It's like, if he makes it, I don't know. By the way, the Eagles have just traded up into the 13th spot.
I was just going to say, and I was actually going to go to Karl with this, because Baltimore's not going to go QB. Houston's still sitting there. Again, they pretty much need everything. And it's been an indictment of the quarterback class at this point in terms of best available not being QBs. But you have the Eagles here. They've been in a quarterback controversy for years. They maybe have separated and feel like they have their guy, but not many love that guy. Do the Eagles do what Nick said minutes ago, that the board's just falling? We don't have to give up much value. We're going to trade up and go grab a guy, even though we're kind of happy with where we are right now because we're not fully in love? Or do they do something else altogether?
Well, they're also at a spot now where the top receivers now have come off the board.
Yeah.
And they desperately they need a receiver. So if they wanted to supplement Jalen Hurts, they're a bit late on that. So
right.
I can't see them really. I mean, based on the way the draft's fallen,
I'm just not sold on Hurts, to be honest with you. So
I'm not either. I'm just saying, but just based on the way that it's fallen so far, I can't see him being like, hey, let's pick up Willis now. Going from Hurts to Willis right now, or even Kenny Pickett right now would be a neutral gain or even a back step. I mean, I just can't see him.
Yeah. Is Baltimore sitting pretty for Davis?
Like, listen, this isn't going to be a quarterback. This is going to be, let's be real here, this is Jordan Davis.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
If Baltimore was sitting pretty for Jordan Davis, which I believe you mocked to, but if they're a pick away, if the Eagles don't do it, Baltimore's going to do it.
The Eagles needed an interior D lineman, and the only interior D lineman that's probably worth a first-round pick in this draft is Jordan Davis. They're going to hop up. I mean, they trade a litter of late-round picks to move up 2 spots to go up and get Jordan Davis over the Ravens. That's probably what they're going to do. I don't know. Maybe they surprise me, and we see Traylon Burks come off, and we see the next receiver come off the board. But I'd be shocked if
4 in a row would be crazy.
Back-to-back corners, 4 in a row receivers, that would be crazy. So if they snab Jordan Davis from Baltimore, and Baltimore historically, we've even seen this where they trade up in front of the Steelers before. Baltimore historically has been very willing to trade up 1 or 2 spots to avoid this scenario. So Nick, if they lose out on Davis because the team trades up in front of them, are they sitting there kind of spinning their wheels? Are they okay with this scenario? What do they do? And is this a lost opportunity for Baltimore here a little bit?
Oh, yeah, huge. You get a massive dude in the middle of your defense that terrorizes the AFC North. Jordan Davis was built to wreck AFC North offenses, man. I'm telling you that right now, but they're now going to have to settle for someone else. And, I mean, not that there aren't good players on the board. I mean, they could take Kyle Hamilton, for example, and wreck everyone's dreams. And they do have that need at safety if they want to take the chance. I know they brought in big signing there with Marcus Williams, but it's possible they could take the safety here. Chuck Clark could be replaced by Kyle Hamilton. But this is a really interesting spot if they take Jordan Davis, because Trevor Penning's also on the board, and they could use a tackle. And the fourth tackle we could see off the board here is Trevor Penning. We've seen them connected to them a little bit. I mean, they could also take a receiver here again if they want Treylon Burks, but the receiver board is pretty bare. The Ravens are kind of in no man's land right now. I'm not going to lie. I think they're kind of in a rock and a hard place where there's really not a guy at an obvious position of need that's going to be there that's great value. If that happens, of course. If Jordan Davis is the pick at 13, if he's not, that's the obvious pick at 14. If he is, I think they're in a little bit of a weird crux.
Yeah. And then you sit forever and wonder, hey, we're one pick away and a team traded up in front of us, which is, again, what Baltimore has done to so many teams over the years. They kind of been that team that's leapfrogged, and now they're potentially getting leapfrogged. Nick Farabaugh, Karl Ludwig, Mike Asti are live edition of our draft show here in Pittsburgh Sports Live, and Steelers Now up into that Steelers pick. And then whatever it is, we'll kind of gauge on how long we need to talk about it and what goes on after that Steelers pick. And of course, all our college sites, Pittsburgh Sports Now, throughout the Now family of networks here. You do see first overall with Trayvon Walker. You go down the line there. You got a lot of D-end edge rushers, a lot of corners, some offensive tackles, some wide receivers. No quarterback yet if you're just joining us and somehow living under a rock. As amazing as that is, and certainly an indictment of this quarterback class. So waiting for this pick here from the Eagles. The Eagles official pick is in. And again, this impacts the class. Are there any other teams, guys, because I'm also going to get this board reset here in a moment, but are there any other teams that you could see trading up or trading back, maybe besides just the Steelers, who maybe would trade up a little bit here if they feel like they need to, or maybe they don't need to really. They probably can sit back and say, whoever's gone will take the other guy. But will there be other trades here? What could go? Baltimore, Houston? If you're Baltimore, maybe, Nick, is the decision, okay, we lost out on Davis. If you do, now maybe we're okay just getting value and trading back because we don't love anybody else and we don't need a quarterback.
Yeah, the question is, are they going to trade with Pittsburgh? I don't think so.
No.
Now, we just saw a division trade with Minnesota and Detroit, so maybe. But yeah. I that's not really in the Steelers-Ravens DNA thing.
Right.
The only Ravens-Steelers trade I can remember is Chris Wormley. So I don't know if that will happen. But maybe, as we talked about earlier, maybe the Titans are lurking here. And I'm saying it. I think maybe the Titans are lurking here. Kind of a rare opportunity to maybe try and upgrade on Ryan Tannehill. And there's a chance Malik Willis wouldn't have to play for like 2 years under his tutelage. So could be an interesting fit there.
Yeah, it does almost feel like some of these teams probably should trade back based on this board right now. 13 picks in, no quarterback. Definitely interesting to say the very, very least here. I guess I was waiting for the pick again because we're going to have to wait a little bit here once again. Either one of you, give me your best available right now.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Hamilton, Jordan Davis, both right up there as your best available. Jermaine Johnson, the edge from Florida State. Andrew Booth, corner from Clemson. You got a few other guys like Devin Lloyd, the linebacker from Utah. And then I think you start getting into other guys like Zion Johnson, Lewis Seen, some other guys there.
How far down the line would a quarterback be?
About 10 to 15 or so. I think Malik Willis would end up being.
I mean,
around.
that's saying something. I mean, that board could take you to the Steelers, if not the Steelers passing on a QB.
Yep. And again, I don't think it's likely they pass on the QB, but
yeah, especially if they got all four right there. That would be I mean, I also think if I'm the Steelers, and again, call me the heel of the broadcast for any Pitt fans that are also Steeler fans. I think you kind of said this too. If I'm the Steelers, this board is falling perfectly for me to take Malik Willis. Yep. If he is there, you take him. You have Trubisky as your bridge. And again, I don't think Trubisky's going to the Hall of Fame by any means, but this is a guy who's a former Pro Bowler. He led a worse roster to the playoffs before. He's only 27 years old. He has 3,000 plus yard passing seasons. Again, I'm not sold on him for the future. Make that clear, but you're looking at 1 or 2 years. He can win you 7 games or so. Are you really going to win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years, no matter who's your QB? Certainly not better off with a rookie in terms of wins and losses right away. You got a lot more needs that are still needing to be filled. Your offensive line was horrible last year. You figured it'd be a little bit better, but also still needs help. Stephon Tuitt, we don't know. I think they need to put a hard deadline on the man, but that deadline's not there right now, at least not told vocally. So that's a position that you desperately need to fill. You can't rely on that being filled. The secondary needs help as well with Hayden and company gone. So you have so many needs. You could actually take a quarterback that has some ceiling that could sit for a year or so. It wouldn't really hurt you because you do have a bridge guy that is the benefit of bringing in Trubisky. You could go all these different directions, or you could go right ahead and take Malik Willis and worry about those needs in the second round. Go receiver there, add some depth there. If you get injuries like you normally have been, you're really screwed at receiver this year with Juju, James Washington, etc. gone. Certainly if Chase Claypool doesn't really step up. So I would probably go Malik Willis if I'm the Steelers. Yeah, Kenny Pickett's more NFL ready, but if you have a bridge and you have a bridge that's good enough to be there for at least 2 years, maybe even get re-signed with his age, certainly can get you the same win total, if not more, right away, and isn't that old. He's only 27. Doesn't seem like you need to go NFL ready. You can go ceiling quarterback, and it appears Tomlin loves Willis more than anybody else. Where there's smoke, there's normally fire with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the draft.
Yep. And you kind of said that, man, and I pretty much agree with it. And I think Willis, it makes the most sense. They've kind of set themselves up for Willis. I just don't see Kenny being the right fit there to sit. Same with Ritter, honestly. I mean, Ritter makes a little bit more sense because he's a little more green, but really, when you look at Ritter, I mean, he's ready to play day one too. Malik isn't, and Malik has that upside. He just fits naturally with what they're doing, what they've set up to do, and he's here on the board. I have a hard time seeing them passing him up there. Now, Jordan Davis just came off the board of the Eagles. So there's one of the dream
there it is, right in front of the Ravens, who apparently the Ravens pick is in. So I guess they didn't trade back, but they lose out on Davis, who seemed to be a perfect fit for them right in front of them, as the Jets and Eagles end up picking, and the Eagles end up getting Davis there off the trade.
Yeah, I mean, this is a interesting spot for the Ravens to be in too.
Do they go wide receiver here? They don't really have a number. They don't have a number one. Unless you really think Hollywood's going to turn it around there, Hollywood Brown. They basically got a bunch of number twos. Lamar Jackson has the ability to move outside the pocket, but that number one could get them to the next level. They haven't had that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but I don't know if there's that number one there. Burks, I don't feel like is that guy, and I don't think it's a good value for anyone else. I think the safe pick here to do is one, either get a little bit more corner depth, so go like Booth. You could go Penning, who I think is a reach. But I think the ultra safe pick here is Kyle Hamilton. Again, you can upgrade on Chuck Clark, and you can pair him with Marcus Williams and get one of the best safety duos in the NFL. That's what makes sense to me. I really think that's going to be what it is. I think Kyle Hamilton makes sense.
Yeah, and maybe safe does make sense here. Do you think they would have won Davis if he was there? Is this an audible that's needing to be called right now?
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at the Ravens draft room. It doesn't appear the excitement. You're not seeing any no one slapping high fives or chest bumping there. It's a very monotone Ravens draft room right now.
Oh, they know they got sniped. They know they did. They wanted Jordan Davis, but Kyle Hamilton is not a bad consolation prize if that is the consolation prize. Yeah. I don't think anyone's happy that they just got sniped at their A1 pick, right? Because I think they wanted Jordan Davis. And that's the danger of telegraphing your pick, man. That's the danger of it. Teams right behind you that might have the same need, are going to jump you.
Yeah, and then obviously the Texans, Washington, the Commanders now to follow. So, hey, did the Texans go quarterback because the board's falling the way it's been? They need everything. They're moving on from Deshaun Watson. Do they go quarterback? Do they go ceiling quarterback in Malik Willis because it might be a similar style? They're willing to go to a ceiling. They realistically know they're not going to win next year. They're willing to wait a while with a project. They don't need NFL ready.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I don't necessarily see that. I think that they would be more inclined to go at another position. Like an edge rusher here, like a George Karlaftis or Jermaine Johnson makes sense to me here. They're good values. Okay. Could go O-line with maybe a Trevor Penning. I keep saying Trevor Penning, but I don't know. They're kind of in a weird spot here, the Texans are. I'm going to say that they're going to end up going I think they're going to end up maybe going with Penning here.
Yeah, Karl Ludwig, Nick Farabaugh, our live NFL draft show here, 2022 edition. We do this every year. This is the most unpredictable. We haven't seen a quarterback off the board yet. Who knows what the Steelers are going to do? They're sitting at 20. Were they thinking about trading up? Can they still? Will it be a few picks? Will they pass on a QB? Will they have their pick of the litter? A lot to still digest here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, Steelers Now, and throughout our Sports Now family of networks. And then also Karl here as we wait for this official pick from the Ravens.
It's Kyle Hamilton.
And there it is. So that's best available now. So now you're just dinging off best available there. With Davis, Kyle Hamilton, you're getting best available. This does still seem like a solid selection, kind of a Ravens type player. That still kind of works, even if they were going to maybe go Davis. But Karl, if Willis is still number one on most boards and maybe he doesn't fit these next few picks, maybe he does. Maybe Kenny Pickett certainly doesn't. Maybe Steelers are the next team that could go Kenny Pickett, as Nick gives me a big shot. I was about to say
Hollywood. So Hollywood Brown just got traded to the Cardinals. Whoa.
What?
Yeah.
So we'll put a pin in my question. Now that might be out of all. We were talking stars that could move in this first round. Baker Mayfield, Debo, etc. They're not. It's not happening. They're not happening yet. Maybe Baker goes second or third round. Maybe Debo doesn't move at all, and maybe does go later. But to see Hollywood Brown get traded after you don't go receiver, you're looking for Lamar to get help. You need a one. Maybe none are left on the board. Are you giving up on Hollywood Brown here? And this Cardinal team is just stacked offensively in terms of weapons there now for Kyler Murray.
Wow. So you're talking about Nuke, Hollywood, AJ Green, James Conner. Whew. That is a haul, man. You want to talk about weapons.
And the pressure is not on Hollywood to be a number one anymore. Now it doesn't matter. He can be a 3.
He shouldn't. Kyler Murray has zero reason to complain about.
I was just about, yeah. Is he putting pictures back up on Instagram now? Is he willing to put them in the bio at this time?
Just pay him and everything's good. Everything's good. But Hollywood, and so Hollywood's now good, right? Hollywood is essentially back with his college teammate in Kyler Murray. So they have that chemistry there. It makes complete sense for the Cardinals. And it was for the 23rd overall pick. Wow. So it's for a first rounder. Yeah. So it's for a first rounder. So the Ravens now have 2 first round picks.
That's not bad at all, though. 23 for Hollywood, solid.
Yeah. Go ahead, Karl.
I'm saying that first round pick, even at 23, is very good value for Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's tons of talent there. There's some athleticism there. You could argue he hasn't lived up to hype to this point, and I don't know if maybe this is part of – if you're Lamar Jackson, are you upset? I mean, he's not gaining weapons. He's losing weapons. I don't know how much he was sold on Hollywood Brown necessarily being the guy, but this Ravens team is still looking to go for it. You would think.
I mean, okay, let's keep it real here. So you trade Hollywood. Who the heck do they have a receiver?
Yeah, right. But they didn't draft receiver, then they trade one.
Jeez.
Yeah. I can't name a single guy, I don't think.
So that's more pressure on Lamar Jackson, who's now older. You need him to run around more, and you have less weapons for him to try to create a big play out of when he is elusive. Seems counterproductive. I don't know if there's some hidden drama here that we're not aware of, because of course we're aware of every hidden drama. It seems like today's sports world. It's shocking to have one that we aren't aware of, but a Brown on the move, and it's not Antonio, by the way. But yeah, Hollywood Brown and the Cardinals. I think the other end of it is, besides the shock maybe to the Ravens, who kind of are weirdly punting on the weaponry for Lamar Jackson while they're still, I guess, trying to fight for it. The Cardinals are just stacked now. I mean, Kyler Murray, not only can he put him back in the bio, there's tons of pressure on him now. Winning a playoff game at minimum or bust here.
What the hell are the Texans doing?
And the Texans right now.
Kenyon Green, okay.
And they're picking, and you do see Kenyon Green there, and that puts Washington and then the Chargers on the clock. And we've now seen some funkiness here in these last few picks. But again, to emphasize for anybody just tuning in or living under a rock, no quarterback taken yet. No rookie quarterback taken yet. No quarterback moved yet. It could not line up more perfectly for the Pittsburgh Steelers to have their pick of the quarterback and overall board litter, really. Maybe not Davis any longer, but they got some options.
Yeah. I mean, good Lord.
And then we're going to have to linger a bit here, guys. Hopefully you're in here for the long haul, because if Pickett's not taken by the Steelers, we do got to get to the Pickett pick. Maybe that's where we're going to have to go further here, unless he's not taken in the first round. But yeah, all those conversations certainly exist now here. The Commanders have their pick in, as these picks are now finally flying in. The Nick Farabaugh faces, I missed these. It's a tip off without even me being able to really browse on Twitter as much while hosting this. But
yeah, here's the thing that the Ravens can do now with that 23rd overall pick, and this just came to my mind.
Okay,
you have the first round pick. Hold it receiver. You getting what I'm kind of communicating here?
Yeah.
Thibodeaux to the Ravens?
I mean, if that's not what's happening, it would be odd to think this is the draft of the Ravens, who are still vocally trying to contend in a wide open division outside, obviously, the Bengals as the defending champs, but it can't feel like they're far away, and to just basically be losing pieces.
Essentially, yeah. And here's the thing about that situation. So you get an absolute coup for Hollywood. Why? Who gives up a first round pick for Hollywood Brown? He's a decent receiver, but I mean that's a heist.
Yeah, I mean that's just win now mode. I need to win a championship right away. That's that's a Rams type of mode. That's F them picks.
Yeah, it's like that's a heist, dude. And then not only that, so not only do you get an absolute heist for Hollywood, but then you look at the Ravens, you're like, well, that's a heist, but now we don't have receivers. So it's it has to be for Debo, right? Has to be. There's got to be more to that. Or you're signing Jarvis Landry. I mean, I guess, right? One of those two things. It has to be.
Yeah. I mean, the Cardinals are going for it. I mean, the pressure has to be on now. And again, it's not like Hollywood Brown is the best receiver in football here. Maybe is underachieved, but the talent is there. The depth is there. They have so much else that giving up that for him seems to be a big piece here. You have the Commanders on the clock, Karl. What does Washington do? We haven't actually talked Washington at all. They're not really a major focus. They finally got a team name. Obviously, they're in a bit of a changing of the guard and era as well.
I mean, I think when they just traded for Carson Wentz, so they have their QB now.
I mean, quote unquote. They have
they have their QB, but they just traded for him, so I can't see him picking a QB here. But they have to give a compliment to Terry McLaurin here. So there are some guys left on the board, obviously, and I mean Washington, solid defense, but the offense still needs some help, and obviously the biggest picker of receivers. So they have Burks, they have Jahan Dotson. They have options here, so we'll have to just. If it were me with Washington, I mean McLaurin is a very underrated player in the league. So if they can get him some help, and they can give Carson Wentz some help with it, they already have two solid running backs.
Yeah,
the offensive line is on the rise. So if they can get some help for Carson Wentz, so they can give some help to McLaurin, give him some space to operate. I mean, that'd be a good day for him.
Yeah, it definitely appears they need to give help for Carson Wentz, who just kind of punted his opportunity with the Colts just a season ago. So yeah, they definitely need as much help as they can get around Wentz, who, again, not long ago was an MVP candidate and then obviously lost his job when he got hurt for Nick Foles, who won a championship for the Eagles. And then he's kind of been toiling around. But if it didn't work with Frank Wright with the Colts, I don't know when it's going to work. But still, the age is maybe on his side to figure something out. They certainly could be worse at QB. But they have a bridge guy. And again, maybe, though, they have a bridge guy that they're not totally sold upon forever and they have a favorable contract who just bounced off a team a year ago. Do they say, well, there's no quarterback taken, we'll take a project right now? Do they go Willis? Do they go something else? You have the Chargers coming up. Then you have the Eagles again. Or are the Eagles the next team that if Washington doesn't do it, then could jump in the quarterback mix? And at that point here, we're at pick 18. Again, there's no way this isn't a board that's falling in favor of the Steelers. To kind of reset a little bit here, the Ravens do trade Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, the cousin of Antonio Brown, if you weren't aware, to the Cardinals for pick number 23, which seems like a lot for a receiver who's underachieved, but that Cardinal team is going for it for sure. And maybe the Ravens put something together, but now the Ravens are behind the Steelers. Do they trade it, do something else again? Nick, what's the most interesting possibility here these next few picks? Washington pick is in. We yet to hear it. The Chargers, the Eagles, what's coming up here now, inching closer to in front of the Steelers. What's interesting here? What could shake things up here?
Oh, wow.
And you do
Jahan
see
Dotson, the Penn State wide
there
receiver,
you go.
just went here. So this is interesting.
Yeah, fire up Nittany Sports now. Yeah, we do
Yeah.
actually have we have a Penn State player going before a Pitt player after a Pitt player was a Heisman candidate.
We also have A.J. Brown going to the Eagles.
Wow. A.J. Brown traded?
A.J. Brown going to the Eagles.
Wow.
For what? I did not see that yet.
It just popped up.
This
Okay.
is crazy.
I haven't
So
seen
now we're having
A.J.
some fun.
Brown going to the Eagles.
You guys having
For
some
Adam
fun now?
Schefter.
You having some fun? You glad you stayed in with me?
Hold
Yeah,
up.
now we're
Wait, hold up. This just put the Titans in front of the Steelers.
It did, yes.
Malik
18th
Willis
overall
to
pick in the third
Tennessee.
rounder. Yeah.
But then if Malik Willis,
is,
if they do that for Willis, then the Steelers, do they sit back at Pickett? Do they settle for Pickett?
I don't know.
Or are they displeased, or do the Steelers need to get some more? The Steelers now need to trade up this?
Well, Saints is still there too, though. I mean,
is there a chance that Pickett and Willis are both gone now in front of the Steelers after this board
It could be just Ritter left at this
fully
point.
falling for them?
Yeah, this is by the way, this is an insane draft. But let me before we do the AJ Brown stuff, let's talk about Jahan Dotson.
Yes.
This is early for Jahan Dotson, and I kind of love it. I know it's a reach, but he's really fun. You know, a guy that has played so many sports, has been a big-time speed threat, such a great route runner, and he's got great timing with his routes, just understands how to attack leverage, a guy that can work inside or outside, a guy that can work deep or over the middle of the field, just a crafty player, really sticky hands, a guy that separates so naturally, has a fantastic release package. This is going to be one of the best route-running duos between him and McLaurin in the NFL. Dotson's such a solid player and plays a lot like Deontay Johnson does. This is a really, really nice place, I think, for him too, to kind of fit in with Carson Wentz, kind of on those middle of the field throws. It's going to be really good for him, but he's got such a dynamic route tree. It makes sense. I think it's early for him again, but I think Jahan Dotson's going to be a really good player. And as that complement to Terry McLaurin, I really like the fit for him. So it's going to be a nice fit here for Jahan Dotson. I think if you're a Penn State fan, you should be happy about where he landed.
Zion Johnson to the Chargers here, so
yeah,
QB
Zion
Central.
Johnson there, guard, Boston College to the Chargers. Also, Nick, you get some compliments in the chat that I'll read here. Excellent analysis, usually spot on. So I'm thinking that's off the Dotson analysis there from Ed. So now we're shaking things up. Now we're having some fun. You're seeing a lot of trades, even though not yet a quarterback taken. You see some potential game changers to this NFL season with the Cardinals really showing their FM picks and going for it right now. The Ravens kind of a wild card. What are they doing? Are they rebuilding? Are they going for it? We'll see later on in this draft, but not really loving what they're doing to this point. Tennessee now is on the clock. And then the Steelers are at pick 20 with Indianapolis right in front of them now? Or is that New Orleans? I'm sorry, New Orleans right in front of them now. Yeah, New Orleans right in front of them. I thought there was another trade that happened that I missed or something like that. Yeah, New Orleans right in front of them now. So you could have an opportunity here at both Pickett and Willis going right in front of Pittsburgh. We did talk about Pickett's fit with the Saints earlier. And obviously, Nick, I'd have to imagine if you're Tennessee, you're not involved in this unless this is Willis, or what else could they be doing?
I mean, they could be taking Willis. They could be taking another receiver. Traylon Burks is here on the board still. Receivers have come off the board crazy, though. 5 already off the board. Receivers have really come off the board quick. And I think that's the byproduct of this crazy system you're seeing with the paying receivers, with the Christian Kirk deal kind of blowing the market up. A lot of teams are taking receivers earlier than you think.
I mean, there's even even the Hill situation. I mean, are the Chiefs going to all of a sudden be horrible even though they lose their best receiver? They have still an MVP caliber quarterback, a Hall of Fame head coach, still tons of weapons around them. It's going to be a tough division.
Yeah, it is. I don't know I don't know what the Titans are doing. Why trade AJ Brown? You don't have another receiver. Like, what? Unless you're getting a quarterback, what are you doing?
Well,
pick is in too.
Yeah, the pick is in. Do you value the quarterback or the quarterback ceiling more than who's on your current roster, separate from QB, even receiver, obviously, in terms of Brown? That have to be the decision that they made by going here. If they would take a quarterback here after unloading a receiver, that would be less help for them, but that would certainly tell you that that's a project that is a ceiling player and they're not worrying about it right now. But it almost feels like them, they're kind of punting the year. This is a Titans team that has been knocking at the door of a deep playoff run. Of course, had that one a couple of years ago, had the win over Tom Brady and the Patriots as he closed out his Patriots career with that playoff loss. The Titan team that has never won a championship in their franchise history. They've only been in the one with Jeff Fisher after the 99 season, lost so close in that game. And obviously that was multiple decades ago. So Titan fans are hungry. The franchise feels like they're right there. They have a coach they finally love. They have a situation they finally love. They have enough, at least a quarterback recently, even if it's not a franchise guy. It does kind of feel odd to go into future ceiling mode and give up the present.
Man, if they're not going quarterback here, they got to be going Treylon Burks, because Burks is the one dude who got the AJ Brown comp coming out, and it makes sense because he's that explosive type of receiver that works over the middle of the field. He's fluid in short areas. He's really explosive in short areas. Like, that's where he came from. That's where.
So why trade AJ Brown for AJ Brown?
Because you don't have to pay him.
Is that what they're doing? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I think they're going with the rookie contract, right? Because they have that albatross of a contract in Tannehill's deal. So it's kind of hurting them to be able to pay AJ Brown $1 million. Like, they're going to pay him $25 million. I mean, that's going to be an insane deal. So the Eagles are going to be paying AJ Brown a ton of money here, man. And so I would imagine this is either going to be for quarterback or Treylon Burks.
And how much of a contender are the Eagles, if at all? And maybe they're also trying to take advantage of the fact that the NFC East is pretty weak.
Yeah, I mean, it's really them and the
Cowboys.
Really and the Cowboys.
And the Cowboys are lords of underachieving. Yeah.
Giants have had a nice night, I think, though. So they're rebuilding, but until they get that quarterback, Daniel Jones isn't going to cut it necessarily. Granted, the Eagles are working with Jalen Hurts. I think the Cowboys still have the leg up on this because they have Dak. But I think you're kind of seeing it, man. I think you're kind of dead on here. Eagles are making some power plays to get back in this thing, and they're surrounding Jalen Hurts with a really nice core of weapons and a really nice defense as well. So I like what they're doing in Philly.
Karl, is there anything else the Titans are doing here outside of Willis, or does this feel like Willis? And then does this also feel like the Saints are going to go Pickett? And if not Pickett, what could they do?
Well, I mean, I have seen the Titans pick. I don't want to spoil it or anything, but
I don't care. The chat maybe cares, but
it's looking like Pittsburgh's going to have the option of either Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, or both, depending on what the Saints do here.
Yeah, I was going to say it depends on what the Saints do.
If the Saints, the Saints are set up now to have the choice of whoever they want, and if that's the case in Pittsburgh, and they might even want Desmond Ridder, but it might be coming down to the choice of
4 years, $100 million, 57 guaranteed for AJ Brown. Wow.
How much?
$100 million for 4 years, 57 guaranteed.
So the Titans just didn't want to pay it, and they're just going to.
Wow.
I'm telling you, that receiver market's going to.
Yeah. It's the weirdest thing, though, because it's the most replaceable position. You can replace it in the draft as an impact player right away, which is why teams, they want to ride with that guy for a while, catch lightning in a bottle maybe, but they're not going to just blast money to that guy either. We've seen it with Hill with the Chiefs. they didn't need to prioritize the money to even the best receiver in football, arguably. And they feel like they can still continue being contender for years and years to come with still a relatively young quarterback. And it does. Yeah.
4 in a row, 5 total in the first 17 picks.
So it's been a draft basically of no quarterbacks, of edge rushers, corners, wide receivers, offensive tackles, and that's pretty much it. A litany of receivers, back-to-back corners in that top 5. It's weird to say the least. Karl Ludwig, Nick Farabaugh, Mike Asti here, and we are inching closer to the Pittsburgh Steelers pick here in our live NFL draft show, Pittsburgh Sports Live. Steelers Now is where you can find the full coverage of the Steelers pick, as well as Pittsburgh Sports Now, West Virginia Sports Now, and Nittany Sports Now. And Nittany Sports Now got the action first among the college sites. I don't know if anyone had that on their bingo card there with the Dotson pick, as Pitt had a Heisman candidate, and Penn State got a player taken before Pitt did in that same draft. And you get Traylon Burks, their wide receiver from Arkansas, for Tennessee. So again, they do basically trade the veteran. They don't want to pay him. They get the younger guy. Nick, you kind of talked about this already. This really focuses now in on the Steelers and with the Saints there. So number one, what are the Saints going to do here? And do we have the scenario of the Steelers lose Pickett right in front of them? Did I curse it on Twitter? And I think, Nick, you cursed it here on the show. It feels like the Saints got to go QB here as another pick in the first round if they're trying to fix this era of Saints ball. What else could they do? Because that has to be a question based on what we've seen so far in this draft. The teams have gone the other way.
Trevor Penning at tackle. They have a needed tackle. Safety, so Dax Hill or Lewis Seen could be the pick.
There's no chance this is Willis though. If it's QB, it's Pickett for you?
I think it's Pickett or Ritter. I don't. Again, they don't strike me as a Willis team. They don't, and if they do take Willis, it's going to say that they're changing their entire offensive philosophy. But Chris Olave doesn't really say that to me. Now he's a deep threat, but he's not the deep threat in the way that he's a pure deep threat and he's a pure speed threat. He's more of like a 3-level threat that can work in a lot of different ways, who just adds a little bit of explosiveness to the offense. So unless they're trying to go full speed here and try to really become more explosive, I can't see it being Malik Willis. Pickett or Ritter are the pick, I think. And they're taking a long time to do this. I mean, they haven't turned it in. I think they're thinking about it. Again, I think the debate going on in that room right now is Willis is not Willis. I think it's Pickett versus Ritter. That's my take.
Who do you think? And again, we maybe are never going to know this answer. And God, would I want to know this answer? I would pay to get this answer. And it's going to be a question that many of us are going to ask. Who do you think the Steelers want available for them out of Pickett, Willis, the quarterbacks that are available right now? Because the Saints could make that decision easy, obviously, if they go Pickett. What do you think the Steelers want to happen here?
I'll tell you what, man. I think that they want to go and get Malik Willis. I think that's who they want. I really
do. You think they want the Saints to do them a favor and get them off a documentary for the next 10 years and just take freaking Pickett?
I think they do. I think they want the Saints to take Pickett. It would help, be convenient, and say, yeah, man, he went the pick before us, and Malik was there, but we had Kenny QB1, so we would have taken him if he was there. Let's be real. Come on. Malik is their QB1. We know this. This is the only thing we knew about this process. They like Malik Willis. It's the only thing I actually knew about the first round in for them. They like Malik Willis. If he's there at 20, they're going – I bet you if Malik Willis is there at 20, the Steelers – time won't even turn in. The pick is in right away. I guarantee it. Tomlin might run it up himself.
Maybe. I mean, the only issue with that is, Nick, and you could end up being right, and it definitely makes some sense. We've talked about it ad nauseum to this point, but it's very likely that Pickett plays before Willis, so you will have to still deal with the Steeler fans watching Pickett maybe have success prior to Willis having it, because the Steelers do have a solid bridge with Trubisky, and they're okay with waiting on a ceiling of Willis if that would be the case. So that would mean they would have to go through the muddy waters of Pickett doing okay, Pickett doing okay, Pickett doing well. Willis still hasn't touched the field. You passed on Pickett.
We have a tweet of Kenny Pickett on the phone here, so not saying anything about that, but that's saying something.
And I almost feel we had to get here. I don't know if you guys, I mean, we've all been covering the Steelers, been covering Pitt. I feel like in terms of irony, it just feels like destiny almost. I feel like we had to get here. I feel like everybody can appreciate this if this would be the scenario in a way.
Yeah, it's insane.
And most of the chat here, by the way, I don't know what college team they're supporting, but most of the chat would prefer Willis to the Steelers as well. So maybe it's not as controversial.
It's correct. He's the right pick. He is. He's the guy that could be the franchise quarterback. Listen, the Steelers don't necessarily need stability right there, right now. A team like the Panthers needs stability. The Steelers have the opportunity to take the upside option. Take Willis. It's the right one.
And with Lewis Riddick sitting there too.
By the way, Malik Willis at 20, if he is the pick there and he is there,
yeah,
a really good pick. Like that's good value for him. Like that's
and
usually go.
And it would mean that Pickett potentially is in a better fit and Willis potentially is in a better fit. And secretly or publicly, the Steelers might actually get their guy without having to worry about the drama. Maybe, Nick, it actually might be the blessing in disguise and the perfect scenario for the Steelers. They could just get the guy they wanted and they didn't have to worry about the decision. They don't have to hear from anybody. They just get the guy they want.
Yup. And that's the thing. Like so let's say the Steelers, okay, here's the Saints picking right now. So
yeah, it is in.
Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa. So the Steelers have the choice of any quarterback they want.
That's insane. Now, how does this rationale make sense then if you're the Saints? Especially for the trading and dealing they've done to this point to not go QB again. And are we now in a scenario here that it's basically factual that this is based on draft spot among the worst quarterback classes of all time? I mean, we're at pick 20. The Steelers are going to have their pick of the quarterback litter. I have been wrong. I never thought this scenario would exist.
No. Remember, one of the worst quarterback classes in recent memory was 2013, and the first quarterback in that class went off the board at 16. That was E.J. Manuel. So, I mean, there was only one quarterback that went in the first round that year. Didn't turn out well for the Bills, but this could be the scenario. The Steelers might be the only team to take a first-round quarterback.
Well, the Steelers are on the clock right now. Do they still sprint that card? Are they thinking about it? If it's Willis, what's the decision? If it's Pickett, what's the decision? Same thing with any other QB here. Does it have to be a QB here? And if they don't go QB here, could we have the first draft class ever where not one quarterback's taken in the first round?
Yeah. Like, this is the dream scenario for Mike Tomlin and company. You don't even move. You don't give up anything. Not future assets, not assets this year, nothing. And you have the pick of the quarterbacks. And so this is a very obvious pick to me. I'm being very real to you. I get, there are Andrew Booth's on the board who's really interesting. I love Andrew Booth. Malik Willis has to be the pick here. He has to be the pick. I don't see a logic unless you think all the quarterbacks in this class absolutely blow, which is possible, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, I think the NFL teams have made that clear.
Yeah. I mean, they don't like the quarterbacks, but Malik Willis is right here.
And you have a bridge. Here. If they didn't have Trubisky, I would be 100% on Pickett.
Yeah. And so the pick is in for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're definitely not going to spoil this one via Twitter. I haven't seen the pick either. I'm not going to spoil myself.
Okay.
Just note the Pitt football account tweeted out a picture of Kenny Pickett on the phone. Just saying.
They did the same thing when the Saints were on the clock as well. And maybe, again, the Steelers are not going to do something because he went to Pitt. If they do select Kenny Pickett, that means he's NFL ready. That means they love him. That means he can play. And there's going to be a conversation on whether this is a blessing in disguise or a doomsday scenario for Kenny Pickett. The pressure would be outrageous. This would be James Conner times 100. A running back and a quarterback, not the same thing. And they kind of took a flyer on James Conner when he fell in the draft, arguably at that spot. So it would be a big deal. Obviously, it'd be cool even for fans and media in many respects, whether you're a Pitt fan or not. Kenny Pickett, a great story from a kid kind of with humble beginnings, baby-faced kid, had to deal with tons of coaches, tons of coordinators, tons of players in and out, inconsistency, continuity wasn't there. Not long ago, Pitt fans hated Kenny Pickett. He became one of the greatest Pitt Panthers of all time, set tons of records, broke Dan Marino records, became a Heisman candidate, did it with a great receiver, finally continuity at coordinator and even head coach, and became a legend in Pittsburgh because of what he did at Pitt. And to play at Heinz Field and continue that on with the Steelers after they lose a Hall of Fame quarterback who goes off in the sunset and retires would be incredibly special and perfect. But it does feel like to me that Malik Willis would make more sense as that ceiling because you do have Trubisky. Trubisky, again, 27 years old, former Pro Bowler, took a team to the playoffs, can still do it and get you enough for these couple years. If Trubisky wasn't there and it was just hanging out with Mason Rudolph, then I could see it. And obviously Haskins passing away does impact things. They've admitted that impacts things, certainly impacts the competition this offseason, which is going to be there regardless. Trubisky likely is your QB1 starting this coming season, regardless of what the Steelers do this draft. That was always going to be the case. Maybe Rudolph is traded. Maybe they get value for him. Maybe they do compete for a while and then it goes to Trubisky. I think that's basically the guess and the pick for most in terms of the Steelers' week 1 starter. But to have their pick of this litter is crazy.
I agree. And this is ideal for Pittsburgh. It really is. Because one, if you don't like the class, well, you get the utter just disdain for the class and you say, we didn't like the quarterback class, so we didn't take one. And maybe this is Lewis Seen or Dax Hill or one of those guys. Maybe it's a safety. Maybe it's Andrew Booth, the corner. Or you get to pick whoever you want from the quarterback class. If that's what you really want to do, you get to pick the quarterback. And Mitch Trubisky doesn't necessarily have to be all world anymore for 2 years, 3 years, whatever. He doesn't have to be a long-term answer. And whoever the pick is doesn't have to be all world either. The pressure, in my opinion, on someone like Malik Willis in year 1 is not that much. You just have to improve. You have to showcase what you got. And so you have the team set up to be what it is right now. And then I think Malik Willis is just the right pick here. And I've said that before.
Everything really does feel that way
for Malik Willis.
And I think it'd be more controversial the other way when you think about it. If they don't go Willis, even if you see Pickett quicker and he has a better start to his career because Willis is more of a ceiling, eventually that could bite you. And maybe the Steelers would go back home and regret it and think, okay, maybe we did take the Pitt guy and the hometown guy over what we should have really done. This chat is all going crazy with Willis's name just flying through the chat here, by the way.
Here they go.
And the Steelers pick is in again. Steelers Now is where to find our complete coverage. We're always going to keep talking about it here on our draft show, Pittsburgh Sports Live. We've been covering Pickett for years at Pittsburgh Sports Now in the Pitt career. We obviously cover the Steelers here. You have the hometown connection. They have to make this decision. This is controversial one way or another. Maybe you like to watch the Steelers world burn because it's going to burn one way or another.
Yeah, and this might be the most Franco Harris has ever sweat since he played an NFL game.
Maybe. And Louis Riddick's sitting there, by the way, on the ESPN stage as well, as part of ESPN's coverage. Maybe he'll announce himself as the full-time GM as well while he analyzes the pick. And obviously a Pitt man, so that would be really special. He came out and made it very clear he thinks the Steelers should do this, can't not do this in terms of taking Pickett. It would also be ironic with the Penn State connection of Franco Harris, by the way. Let's not lose sight of that. Obviously a Steelers legend.
It would be.
I mean, this has set itself up to be everything anybody could want it to be, having this discussed ad nauseum for the past year, both by
guys. Kenny Pickett is a Pittsburgh Steeler,
and they couldn't resist. I guess they couldn't resist doing it.
Wow.
And again, it goes from ceiling to they do the local selection. You see Rod Goodell even laughs at the selection, and I don't mean making fun of it, but just the insanity of it happening. And we've seen,
my goodness, guys, I'm actually shocked.
Yeah, again, and he's crying. And obviously this is a little different than Dan Marino because Dan Marino from Pittsburgh played at Pittsburgh Central Catholic, then Pitt, going from Oakland to Pitt to the Steelers would have been the ultimate trifecta. But Kenny Pickett goes from Pitt legend to Pittsburgh Steeler. The pressure's now there. The pressure's really now there because some could argue that Malik Willis has the higher ceiling and was the first overall quarterback for many. He now doesn't go beyond the first 20 picks, as insane as that is, Pickett ends up being the guy. You have a leader. You have a humble kid. You have the right mindset that you want to lead your franchise. Maybe those intangibles also bumped him a little bit. He is more NFL ready. You have your bridge quarterback, though. So maybe you're getting to your guy quicker. Maybe somehow Pickett could win the job right away. I still think it's Trubisky right away. But for him to be there, is it a scenario, guys, where they couldn't pass up the Pitt kid? Do they love Pickett being so NFL ready? Karl, actually, I want to get you on here before Nick, because you've kind of been our Pickett insider in a way. What are your thoughts here? Pickett, the fit of Pickett to the Steelers from a football perspective, if the intangibles played a role in this at all, and what do you think the atmosphere is going to be in terms of the pressure for Kenny Pickett on the Steelers? It does happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the hometown kid staying in Pittsburgh is a massive story. I mean, it's a fairy tale for Kenny Pickett, who is, I mean, he's come from Oakhurst, New Jersey, from Ocean Township. He's been here for a long time now. He's grown to love the city. The city loves him, and now he'll be staying here for a while now, and it could be for the next decade plus. So it's for him, it's a fairy tale. It might not end that way if he can't pick it up now in the NFL. But I think for what Pittsburgh needs and for this team, I think it's clear that Pittsburgh is saying that we believe Kenny Pickett can come in and compete now with Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, and we think we can make an impact and make some noise as a ready-made NFL starter. So it's gonna be tough for him, but I think his kind of skill set is well designed for this offense. I mean, he has a strong run game with Najee Harris. He has some solid receivers. The offensive line has to get better still, obviously, but there were some moves made in free agency. So I mean, this probably is his best landing spot in terms of familiarity, personnel, but the pressure is obviously there because staying in Pittsburgh from Pitt, he's going to have to produce right away or people won't be happy.
And they might not be happy at the Steelers. I mean, it depends on who your allegiance aligns with more so. There could be Pitt fans that are more Pitt fans than Steelers fans that if Pickett would get rushed in there, or obviously Trubisky being the bridge, you figure would still have the kind of leg up to be QB1 to open up the season. If you go into week 4 or 5, you lose a couple games, Trubisky's not playing that well, you're going to have a lot of people calling for Kenny Pickett even early in the season, maybe more so than normal for the rookie, because more so than they would have done for Willis is with the ceiling, because they love the Pitt guys so much. Nick, I know you're chomping at the bit and we have the Chiefs on the clock, but it doesn't mean much to us right now. We could also talk Willis and where he eventually is going to go, but it doesn't mean much to us right now. Pickett to the Steelers. What does this mean? I know you're really shocked. How does he fit with the team overall? And how does this dynamic change now for the quarterback competition? Because literally 1 month ago, you bring in a former Pro Bowler in Mitch Trubisky, who's still 27. You have Mason Rudolph, who I don't think they hate, even though they don't certainly love and they're not sold on. Dwayne Haskins, a former first rounder, had all the talent in the world, like Mitch Trubisky was a former first rounder. He didn't get it done last year, but maybe there was some hope something could happen. He tragically passes away. You do have Mitch Trubisky. Mason Rudolph clearly is going to probably be moved for some value at this point now. And you bring in Kenny Pickett, who's NFL ready, wearing a Steeler cap, as a Pitt legend who will stay in Pittsburgh. If you had Malik Willis, you're probably giving it to Trubisky right away, and that's going to be a ceiling for the future. Does Pickett have a chance to win this job right away? What is the leash for Trubisky? What is the situation for Pickett now as a Steeler?
I don't think it matters, man. I don't like this pick. I'm sorry. I'm coming out right now. I don't think it's a good pick. I get it. The hometown story. And listen, I cover Pitt. I watch Pitt.
Yeah.
I like Kenny. I like him. He's my quarterback.
You went to Pitt. Let's be real.
Yeah. He's a QB. He's my QB2. Okay. This feels just, I don't think they needed to make this safe pick. Yeah. Kenny's accurate. Kenny's a really great leader. He just has things that are going to hold him back from ever being the franchise guy. He doesn't have a rocket arm. You don't need a rocket arm, but his arm's average to below average. His pocket management is seriously suspect, and he still has to work on that pocket management. That's the big thing here is that pocket management is going to kill him. And you talk, I don't care about hand size, whatever. The hand size is kind of whatever, right? I don't really care much about that except for fumbles. He had a lot of fumbles, but when you run yourself into sacks, that's a big issue. Kenny Pickett is accurate. Kenny Pickett is solid out of structure, and Kenny Pickett is a really decisive quarterback. So you get a guy with a high floor and, in my opinion, a lower ceiling. So I'll do what I said with Allen. I'll give you my low, mid, and high-end comps. Low comp, Josh McCown. Mid comp, Teddy Bridgewater. High comp, Derek Carr. That's your comps. Now, if he ends up reaching his ceiling, improves his mechanics a little bit, fixes his pocket presence, and we're talking about Derek Carr, this is going to be looked back as a really good pick. And that's the point there.
Yeah. Carr not Hall of Fame, but he's been a franchise guy. He just led the Raiders to the playoffs. They gave him big money. You're putting up numbers. And he's shown he can elevate players.
And so here's the thing with Kenny is that you went really safe, but there is the distinct possibility that he is what he is. He's a see what you get, and you end up and you essentially just drafted Teddy Bridgewater, and in 5 years you're looking to move on. Like, that's the distinct possibility here. You pass up on the raw traits of Malik Willis, the dynamite traits. And this tells me the Steelers did not want to take on a complete project of a quarterback.
Yeah.
And that's what this says. They were always looking at the safe guy. They were okay with that. And they clearly came into this draft saying there was no strict quarterback that is going to be that, like, we are going to kill it with this guy. He is everything we want. All these quarterbacks are flawed in some way, and they wanted the safe pick of Kenny Pickett, and that's what they're doing. Now, the Pickett fit, I think the Pickett fit in the Canada offense is obviously a very natural one. He recruited him, but they run a lot of RPOs. They run a lot of middle of the field concepts. We talked about this middle of the field, right? This was the one place they could not open up at all last year. This is where Kenny Pickett thrives, the middle of the field. A lot more play action coming your way. You're going to see a lot more spread concepts. You're going to see mesh. You're going to see a lot more two-level things. The deep ball is not what Kenny's strength is. Now, he can throw the deep ball, but his deep ball isn't elite necessarily. It is average, just slightly above average. It's accurate. He's improved on that. And this is what tells me the Steelers really wanted Kenny Pickett. It's what they have said throughout the draft process. What did Kevin Colbert say the most important? He said the most important thing for a quarterback was to be accurate. Check. Kenny's accurate. What did Tomlin say on Monday? The intangibles of a gamer to be tough and to take the next level of kind of off the field toughness. That's what he wants. There's no bigger gamer in this class than Kenny Pickett. Yep. Those two qualities are checked off. And this is, maybe you should just believe what the Steelers say at press conferences at this point, honestly. I mean, because they just gave it there. And, and you could, outside of the accuracy comment, you could kind of relay those to Malik Willis too. And everyone thought it was Malik Willis because the obvious, traits were there. The interest trails were there. But Kenny Pickett is the pick. And again, I would have taken Malik Willis. I think I would have bet on the franchise upside. I think Kenny Pickett's a safe pick. I think he's a guy who can be a starter for a long time. He's going to have to improve on that pocket presence. I don't think it's a move that's going to help you win a ton in this loaded AFC. That's my biggest thing. It's not a move that, Kenny's not going to be the guy that's going to stretch everyone up to the next level. That's the point. And he's going to be a guy it's going to be more of a game manager type. Now, if he ends up being Derek Carr, he can be a little bit of that, but he has to take the requisite steps. Now that they have Kenny Pickett, though, and I'm going to make this prediction, don't be shocked if he's the week one starter. Don't be shocked.
Well, that's the question I asked you. Yeah, you said it didn't change anything. Yeah. It changes something then.
It changes that because Mitch Trubisky now has to earn that spot, one. And two, right. I'm telling you, with the way Kenny Pickett competes, with the way he's going to come in here to training camp and try to establish himself, I've seen it behind the scenes. Kenny Pickett is going to come in to this room and try and make it his own. And he's not going to be
scared of Mitch Trubisky. I mean, again, Mitch Trubisky, the former Pro Bowler, but he's not going to be scared of Mitch Trubisky. This isn't like if Kenny Pickett was drafted 2 years ago and Ben Roethlisberger was still there and you knew Ben was going to hang around for at least another year or so. They had loyalty to him. He's a Hall of Famer, even if he was fading. I could then see, okay, your mindset is I'm going to try to compete, but I'm really not going to win the job. Now I'm sure he's saying, I built myself up into a legend at Pitt over adversity, and now I'm staying here. I know the field. I got the fan support, most of them, and I can beat out Mitch Trubisky. I can certainly beat out Mason Rudolph. I'm not scared of anybody. I've overcome it before, and I'm going to be the guy now. Again, though, I don't believe the Steelers are going to do that. I do agree with you. They clearly wanted the more NFL-ready guy. It feels like the Steelers, and this is what the Steelers always do, guys, and this is part of how the Steelers are always good enough, or at least in the last decade, not championship caliber maybe. It's been a while since that. But they're never going to have a top 5 pick in the draft. Tomlin's never had a losing season. That's part of the legacy. That's a positive, obviously. But they're always in win now mode, whether they should be or not. So it does appear to me they're still in win now mode. And we'll get to, I know there's been a couple picks here. The Packers end up jumping in, getting a pick, and then Willis is, again, a conversation of when that man's going to be drafted and the incredible indictment of this class, because obviously Green Bay is not, was not in play for him. Rodgers still coming back, and Jordan Love's still there.
So just want to talk a little bit. Alan Saunders is doing a thread here on Twitter of some of the Kevin Colbert's speaking right now. So that's my comment.
Yeah.
About Pickett. They said 1, they never expected him to be there at 20. 2, he was their quarterback 1.
Wow.
3, and this is one thing that says something to me. Tomlin said Pickett is a high floor quarterback with pro accuracy. Boom. That's why they made the pick. Right there. High floor, pro accuracy. They wanted safe. And they got safe. So that's kind of the mindset they were in here. And so it's interesting. And Tomlin did come out and say he will be able to compete, and he has the chance to start on week 1. So there you have it. I
don't think they're going to do it. If I had to put money down, I would still lean Trubisky week 1 this year. I would still lean that way this year, just because I do think the conversation is going to be, even with the veterans in the room, Cam Hayward alike, they feel like they still have a roster to compete for the postseason this year, fair or not, right or wrong. And giving it to Pickett week 1 is a risk, because you're going to go through rookie growing pains no matter how much you love the guy. Those growing pains won't exist with Mitch Trubisky, even if he's not your franchise guy, because he's been around the block and already gone through them. That's his advantage for week 1.
The Ravens just traded back again if we're just tracking the draft, which is –
I mean, at this point, if you're the Ravens, they probably are like, yeah, we kind of punted the draft a little bit here. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, if you're the Steelers and if you're Kenny Pickett, you got to like the situation. Forget it's the Steelers. Forget it's Pittsburgh. Yeah, the Bengals are the class. They just won the conference. The Ravens are now toiling. You're not really sure what's going on. The Browns got tons of drama, and their quarterback likely is going to get suspended to start the year. And even if he doesn't, they're the Browns, and there's tons of uncertainty there and tons of drama. They're still got to change things up a bit, so it's not that bad of a situation for Kenny Pickett just on the football field at all.
Yeah.
Let's see if anything on the chat here. Anything else more from Alan there? If you guys can check that out there on Twitter. I mean, Al, if you want a guy with Pickett stories, obviously, there's no one who's covered him more than Alan Saunders.
The Pitt savant, if you will.
Yeah, you could maybe argue that. I mean, obviously, it's an incredible story. It really, really is. There is a controversial tint to it that it will put a lot of pressure on Pickett. And it actually appears, I'm glad the way that the Steelers answered it too, because they didn't, I want to make this clear, despite, I've criticized possibly this selection. Nick's criticized this selection. It might be a controversial selection, depending on if you really believe Willis is a higher ceiling and you already have a bridge quarterback that's a former Pro Bowler, no matter what you think of him. But they liked Kenny Pickett so much they couldn't resist it. Kenny Pickett was their QB1. They were in love with Kenny Pickett, and it was an indictment of this class on what's happened prior, but they couldn't resist it. Now, you do wonder what would have happened if Kenny Pickett was not available. Would they have taken Willis if Pickett was off the board? Would they have not gone quarterback at all? Do they? No, you mentioned they don't want a project.
This tells me if Pickett had been off the board, they would have taken Ritter. That's my take on that. I think they're
okay.
So if we're going by safety measures here,
yeah.
QB1 is probably Pickett. QB2 is Ritter. And then I'm going to guess, because you kind of can throw Corral, Howe, and Willis into kind of this own bucket, I'm going to guess that their QB3 is Willis. QB4 is probably Howard. And then you kind of can flip whatever, Howe or Corral. So I think you would have had to have Ritter and Pickett off the board. That's my take.
Yeah, and the Bills take a wide receiver there, so we do get some pick action here.
Who'd they end up taking?
Oh, the Bills pick is currently in. That was a past image there. But you get a decent amount of receivers, decent amount of corners, decent amount of edge rushers, one quarterback taken to this point, first quarterback off the board, Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett, the hometown kid. Unbelievable is really all I can say here. And again, we're going to go to when Malik Willis is going to be taken at this point here. But Karl, paint me the picture in terms of what needs to happen for Kenny Pickett to win the job, and what would be the thinking if he doesn't win the job, since maybe he's at least now be able to be vying for it, and they clearly do feel like he's NFL ready, and what Kenny Pickett needs to do now, what he still needs to work on now to get that job, and how he gets there, because it's the hometown story. Everyone's in love with it. He obviously had a great past calendar year as a Heisman candidate, an ACC championship, and you get drafted by the team in the city that you just played college ball for. There's going to be pressure there. But I've talked to tons of draft analysts on different shows. He's not perfect. What does Kenny Pickett now need to work on after he is done crying and the love affair is over? Because if he goes out there and flames out and doesn't play well, even the staunchest Pitt fan who's a Steeler fan is going to eventually say, hey, I'm not going to support you against the Steelers actually winning. They love the Steelers above all else. So what does he need to work on the field to make this the most special story possible?
Right. Well, obviously picking him here in the first round, the first quarterback, means that Pittsburgh, the Steelers are locked on him. Obviously, he is their guy. He's their future. And entering his age 24 year, I mean, he's 24 years old next year. It's right. It's time for him. There is no waiting period. It's not like he's some 21-year-old, 22-year-old kid who's going to have time to sit. It's time. 24 years old, it's time for him to jump into the game and compete this year. And obviously they feel he can do so. But his biggest flaws probably right now are his physical kind of setbacks. So he's not this arm strength is not like rocket. He's not a rocket arm. He's not like a Malik Willis in terms of running the ball, but he doesn't have to be. I mean, if he can be the game manager who can make the right reads, who can make the throws necessary to move the offense while opening up the run game with Najee Harris, that can be a very successful offense if they can protect him. He still has to work on his presence in the pocket. He has to just learn how to be a professional player. Because going from Pitt in the ACC to playing in the AFC North with Pittsburgh now is going to be a massive, massive wake-up call.
Right.
The edge rushers now are a whole different story. The cornerbacks are a lot smarter. He just has to learn how to play at the professional level. And clearly Pittsburgh thinks he's smart enough and ready physically to jump in here and compete with Mitch Trubisky, who is, I mean, at this point, he'll only be like 3 or 4 more years older than Pickett will be. So it's not like he's this massive veteran presence. He's been around a while. He can be a mentor for Pickett if he feels a need to do so. But Pickett's main problem now is he has to learn how to be a pro, and he has to clean up his mechanics and everything to be that professional player, because he has the legs to move around the pocket. He's much more mobile than Ben Roethlisberger was. He has the arm to make throws necessary to be a pro. You can't expect him to go out there and make these massive on the run 60-yard throws. You can't expect him to have these 60-yard runs like he did in the ACC championship game against Wake Forest.
Will he try the slide again? Are you going to see the slide again?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe the biggest thing here is to temper your expectations. He should be. He should be a very solid pro. Yeah. But no one should think he'll come out here and be a Justin Herbert year one and throw 37 touchdown passes and 5 picks. I mean, he's gonna have his struggles if he's starting. And
I hear you. And you guys are a little bit younger than me. I'm pessimistic that some of those fans can do what you're asking, I guess, is what I'm saying, in terms of tempering expectations now. And I get that if the ceiling's Derek Carr, that's not bad. That's not Canton. And if the safe,
no Patrick Mahomes or anything.
Right. If safe is Teddy Bridgewater, that's safe. And maybe that's why the Steelers went Pickett. They felt like the floor was still high enough to be safe. Steelers now has the complete coverage over there. Pittsburgh Sports now does as well. Kenny Pickett goes to the Steelers. First quarterback taken, falls right into the Steelers' lap. It was their quarterback one, so they say, even though some thought Willis, maybe higher ceiling. NFL ready is Kenny Pickett and will join the mix. He will stay in Pittsburgh and play for the Pittsburgh Steelers to start his NFL career, and we will see where it goes from there. Nick Farabaugh, Karl Ludwig, Mike Asti here. We're on Pittsburgh Sports Live, of course, throughout the Sports Now Network, our live NFL draft show. And guys, I know there's been some picks we missed, but we had to miss them. We knew we were going to miss them after the Steelers picked, and certainly after they picked Kenny Pickett. Kind of surprising. Certainly had their pick of the litter, and they didn't go off the board. They didn't go not a quarterback. They went quarterback, and they didn't have to worry about the Saints or whoever, upsetting the apple cart in front of them, which was maybe pins and needles for some others as well. And they're able to take Pickett. Now, Nick, as we kind of round out the show now, I got two things for you. Number one, where does Malik Willis go now? What is the situation for Malik Willis now? Because now you're getting close to leaving the first round. We're now at the tail end of the first round. Not as many teams need quarterbacks. And does maybe Tennessee get back in play, or what goes on here? Some teams that passed on quarterbacks because maybe an indictment of the class earlier, maybe are back in play now, late first round, that maybe could deal with a project. I'm going to get you to reset the board here later on as well before we close things off. But Malik Willis has to be the conversation now that we wrapped up Pickett. Where does he go? What is his situation? Even the other quarterbacks. I mean, obviously Sam Howell and others are clear second rounders and have lost some money.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, man, I think that Malik is, I didn't expect this to happen to him, first of all, but I think that there's a few areas where he could land now. Tennessee is still up on the board. They could potentially take him. I mean, there are a few teams that could take him. I think we're looking, maybe Tampa Bay could be like the surprise of the year.
Well, yeah. Brady's not going to play forever. Yeah,
he's not going to play forever. But I'm looking, second round guys that could come, teams that could come in. We talked about the Giants earlier, maybe wanting to move on from Daniel Jones. They're still at 36, maybe coming up back into the first round.
You don't think Tennessee does it again coming up?
I think they could. Houston, Seattle's at 40 and 41. Seattle has two picks there with 40 and 41. Yeah. I think they are the team that could come up and get Willis. I think that is an interesting pick. Indianapolis at 42 is, I think, his absolute floor. That's my opinion there. I can't see Indy passing him up at 42. I think a team ends up trying to get into this first round, though, because he's got such great upside, and he's going to have to sit for a year or two, that you likely think, and I say this, you likely think that you're going to have the opportunity to potentially, develop him, and you want that fifth year. So I think some team's going to come up and try and get him.
Why do you have to, looking at the teams, though, coming up? The Ravens aren't going to do it. Tennessee's not going to do it. The Cowboys aren't going to do it. Why do you have to trade up to get him? And you could likely sit and maybe get him. Yeah. That's kind of been the issue to this point, why I think these quarterbacks have fallen, and why Pickett was the first off the board of the Steelers at 20, because teams were probably thinking what I'm saying here. I don't need to trade up because they're going to fall. Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's an indictment on the quarterback class, right? That the first quarterback was the Steelers taking Pickett. I just look at the talent overall in the class at the quarterback position. And again, we just talked about it. It's just not really there. Again, Malik Willis has all that talent, but he's so raw. He is so raw. And I mean, we are talking about a guy that is not Josh Allen away. He's not a Josh Allen type away. He's not a Trey Lance away. He's rawer than both. And by significant margins. So we're talking about a guy that, honestly, I think, and I keep saying this, in the right situation, honestly, I think Malik Willis sits not 1 but 2 years. Like, that is what I feel like, you're looking at here. A guy that just hasn't proven he can play in structure at all. In the quarterback class, it just hasn't bucked out how people thought it would. Ritter has accuracy issues. Corral played an RPO offense that barely used pro concept. Howe is kind of the same way, but he crumbles under pressure. It's been kind of a disaster for the quarterback class right now. And the Steelers went with the one who was the most safe because they probably felt like the rest of this entire group was just not worth it.
Yeah. What's the best situation for Willis and the other quarterbacks that are remaining now? Not who will take them, but best situation that they could be put in.
I think the Giants would be a nice spot for Willis. I really do. Again, with what they've added onto the team this year, I think some of the guys they have there, he won't have to start right away. Again, Daniel Jones is going to be there. So you have a bridge quarterback there. So I think that's a nice fit for him. I like him there. As for Ritter, I think he fits what Seattle wants to do philosophically speaking. So I think that makes sense for him overall. I think some of these other guys are going to be looking at some falls, man. I don't know how far we're going to see Howe and Corral fall, but we could be talking third round for these guys. But Willis, I think the Giants would be a nice fit for him. I think Seattle is a little bit of an interesting place for him because now they have Charles Cross there, so he's going to have better protection, and he has two really good weapons in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Right. So I think Seattle. I think
is he similar enough to Russell Wilson that it also would be maybe a similar offense to learn, a similar guy to teach the offense to?
Yeah,
more of a runner, but is he similar enough?
Yeah, I mean he's similar. I don't think completely. I think he's obviously doesn't have the accuracy he does, but he has the deep ball. He's the deep ball, the mobility, that dynamic athleticism. He fits. He fits Pete Carroll to me. Like he screams Pete Carroll quarterback. So I think that makes sense for him. From a philosophical standpoint, he would fit very nicely. I would say that. And I think that'd be a nice pick for Seattle too.
I think they couldn't avoid it. I mean, at that point, it would be hard to say no at that point. And obviously the slide would then be ridiculous. You mentioned the coach maybe has that absolute floor for him. But I would feel like a lot of, again, to talk about the indictment of this quarterback class, Nick, now for the remaining quarterbacks after Pickett goes 20th to the Steelers. So the Steelers get their pick of the quarterback litter, as surprising as that ended up being. The indictment of the quarterback class continues on, and definitely that's the story of this draft now. The indictment of this quarterback class, it really is definitely going to be in terms of what the NFL teams think of them. And it's also very likely the next quarterback taken, or certainly Willis, will be taken by a team that already passed on him. So imagine that vibe for a first-round quarterback. You're their guy, but they're not really giving you the keys to the Cadillac just yet. They're dangling them in front of you, and they're basically making a statement. We're clearly not sold on you if we were willing to pass on you. I mean, Tom Brady and others who are Hall of Famers talk about teams that passed on them. There's the Brady Six. But your own franchise may have passed on you.
And that's the thing, right? It's like none of these quarterbacks are guaranteed anything at this point, other than Pickett, who has that first round capital with them.
Yeah. Even
if Willis is drafted in, say, 31, 32, he's not guaranteed anything. And I mean that. He's not guaranteed anything. Ritter is not guaranteed anything. None of these guys are guaranteed anything. And so you're going to look back on this class and you're going to say, yeah, it's probably not great because we thought the opportunity would at least be there for these guys, right? Like the opportunity should have presented itself with first round draft capital. But now we don't even know how many are going to go round one. It's completely possible. And I don't think it ends up being this way. I think another team will jump into the back end of the round one to take one of these quarterbacks. But it's completely possible. We're talking about Kenny Pickett being the only quarterback taken in this first round. And he's the only one guaranteed anything. And I keep saying that because just because you draft Malik Willis at 40 doesn't mean he's guaranteed anything. He's not. If he doesn't pan out, you can move on easily. Yeah.
And I will say the I guess, somber news for any of our viewers and listeners here. We're not going to get Alan Saunders on this broadcast. The surprise to all of us of Pickett being taken by the Steelers does actually increase the workload of Alan and the crew here. So obviously he's going to have an interview with Kenny Pickett. We're having some videos here in Pittsburgh Sports Live. Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin. Definitely be here. Definitely continue to subscribe to here for those notifications as they linger on. I'm going to have some clips from this. They're going to spread out all through the sites. Again, Pittsburgh Sports now has the Pickett coverage, obviously. Nittany Sports now has the Dotson coverage. Obviously, West Virginia Sports now are kind of waiting for something still. And Steelers coverage has the Steelers pick and what's to come as well. So before we get to that and what's to come for the Steelers here in our fourth quarter of the show here, really our final minute or so of the show, and no game-winning drive needed. The Steelers get their guy. They get their QB1. They get the hometown kid as Willis sits and wait. Nick just talked about Willis's future and things like that. But Nick, I want to get you to reset your best available right now, left on the board. And then I want to get from both of you kind of, what the Steelers do from here when we're off the air after the first round, the dust has been settled. They made their QB decision. So QB is done. What do they then do the rest of this draft, which is still very, very important? There are other needs. This is still a very important draft for the future of this franchise.
It is. And so some of the best players on the board still are Andrew Booth Jr., Jermaine Johnson, two guys there, Tyler Linderbaum, the center from Iowa, Devin Lloyd, the linebacker from Utah. You got two really good safeties in Dax Hill and Lewis Seen as well. And I think you have what is considered a nice edge crop here at the late portion. You have Karlaftis there as well. But really a weird draft in terms of how it's fallen. Yeah. Little quarterbacks, an absolute crap ton of receivers. The receiver market has just been insane in this class. So it's really been something to watch overall. But those are the top players on my board right now.
And a receiver class that it's also been pretty clear, and the A.J. Brown trade, the Tyreek Hill trade from a month or so ago makes this clear. These receivers, unlike, say, a quarterback, great job. First-round pick, you're going to get some money. Don't get too comfortable about living there for the next decade because you're likely going to be playing for another team in 4 or 5 years when these franchises decide we'll get the value for you now, we'll get the production for you now since it's an instant ready production type of position, but it's unlikely we're giving you the max money. At least these teams, if they are contenders, it's clear these franchises don't feel they need to pay mega deals for receivers for whatever reason, maybe because they're so easily replaceable, maybe because of drama, who knows, and they can go dip back in the draft and get their guy. Karl, what's your story for this draft, and what are the Steelers going to do now from here? They got Pickett, they got their guy, they got their quarterback. Obviously, receivers still a need position. There's been many receivers off the board, though, so they do not have the Pickett receiver litter any longer. You could go secondary. You could certainly go defensive line. The two question is still certainly out there. They got things they still need to do. What do the Steelers do? What's your story of the draft here?
Yeah, well, obviously you have the QB now, which is the biggest, the front page story. So, for better or for worse, Kenny Pickett your guy, which is to some better, some worse. But I think looking ahead now, you have to fill out the roster. So, I think receiver is a big need. Safety, cornerback will be a big need. Some round two guys I'm looking at will be Sky Moore, Western Michigan. He has those Pittsburgh ties from Shady Side Academy, played with Dino Tomlin. There's a connection there. George Pickens from Georgia, big, strong receiver. He could be a real difference maker, putting him in the right offense. And then on defense, someone like a Jaquan Brisker from Penn State. If you want to pump the in-state, you want to keep the in-state vibes going, Jaquan Brisker could be a nice compliment to Nick Fitzpatrick. But offensive line is still probably needs to have a couple pieces. There'll be some picks across the board here, offensive line wise, but the second round pick, 52nd pick, you're going to have 20 or so picks ahead of you now so there's a lot could happen before then, but you're going to have some talented guys on both sides of the ball there. But I'm looking at receiver, I'm looking at defensive back, and if someone falls at offensive line or even defensive line, you have to see. I like the best player available pick philosophy, but second round, you kind of have to start honing in on what you need to bring into the team. And I'm looking at wide receiver and defensive back.
Yeah, and there is a thinking of maybe you're able to do best available when you feel like you got your guy, and they feel like they already got their guy. So it almost sounds like from the comments of Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin that if they don't fill the needs of other positions, even because no team is perfect everywhere across the board. And I don't think now just drafting Kenny Pickett for the future is anyone saying that the Steelers are going to win the championship next year. They're probably not a Super Bowl favorite. However, they feel like they got their guy. They got their QB1. They did what they needed to do. They claimed they thought he was going to be taken well in front of when he was taken. So it definitely sounds like, and like Nick said, there's no reason why to think the Steelers are lying to you now. This is 5 years in a row, basically, of them pretty much telling you right up there what they're going to do. So, you know, there's no, the first time they lie about the draft would be the first time now, at least recently. It feels like they're going to believe they won this draft in their mind. If they got Pickett, they got their QB1, they got the bridge, they
Clearly
got the
he was
future.
their guy. Yeah.
And I honestly, when you think about it, it also feels like to me, from covering this team for years and being around them, that if they go into next season with Trubisky starting, or they go into next season with Pickett starting, they're probably fine with either scenario. They probably went from having a Hall of Famer retire to being kind of okay with the QB situation going in the offseason, which is pretty surprising and rare, especially when you have one of those guys that was going to compete that's a former first rounder that passes away tragically, and your incumbent, again, Mason Rudolph, who never really could stabilize himself despite maybe being average, mediocre Mason's the joke. I think he got too much hate from some and not maybe too much love from the others, but he's going to be a backup somewhere else, it appears. I don't imagine he'd want to stay and be probably a QB3 on the Steelers or even QB2 another year, but who knows that scenario. Nick, now that you're back here, as we close the show, so you reset your board. The Steelers got their guy. No matter what, the Steelers got to feel like they won this draft in their mind. We can criticize it, but they got their QB1. They got the guy they love. They got the guy they wanted. They got the guy they had a high grade on. So what Kenny Pickett does is going to reflect back on Tomlin and Kevin Colbert and the Steelers. They have now made their opinions clear. This isn't anything we need to wonder. They believe Kenny Pickett to be a star. Hall of Fame is certainly something that you normally have as a ceiling for a first-round quarterback, but there's an indictment of this class. You don't know where this class is going to take you, and Kenny Pickett's ceiling and comp is not necessarily there. He's going to compete. We'll see what happens QB-wise. They have other needs, though. Now QB and that drama's behind you. You get your guy. What do the Steelers do from here, and what should the Steelers do from here?
They need to add a receiver. That's the next point, which is an issue because the receiver run today has kind of hurt them in that regard. But the other flip side of that is that, well, the teams that need a receiver's already got them, so you kind of know what your board's going to look like. And two of their main targets are still on the board. George Pickens is still on the board, and so is Sky Moore. You want to talk? I'm just throwing this out there. You want to talk about a Pittsburgh homecoming of the first 2 rounds? Kenny Pickett at 20, Sky Moore at 52.
Yeah. That's what Karl actually alluded to. Yeah.
I mean, that could be a crazy first 2 picks, and I think it'd be a good one too in terms of Sky Moore. I think George Pickens still there. I think receiver's the next way you go. I think you do look at safety in the next few rounds. Corner, I think those are 2 really solid options for you. But I think receiver is now priority numero uno for this team, and I think that's what they're going to look to do in round 2. Round 3, I think you kind of open up the box, if you will. You can go linebacker, corner, safety, O-line, D-line. You can go really anywhere you want at that point. So as long as receivers taken care of in round 2, I think things will look a lot better.
Guys, if they don't go receiver in round 2, because I think that makes sense, but if they don't go receiver in round 2, is it defensive line, and who would be that guy?
Man, I'll tell you what, defensive line is kind of interesting because the defensive line hasn't been picked a ton this draft. Just Jordan Davis. So you still have Wyatt out there, Travis Jones, Logan Hall, Perrion Winfrey, DeMarvin Leal. Like there's a nice kind of crop of D linemen here on day 2. And that's just the round 2 guys. If you look at round 3, you have guys like Phil Mathis from Alabama that are there. There are plenty of good players that are going to be a D line. If the Stephon Tuitt situation is a little bit more urgent than we think. So it could be something that they look at. And I think that there's the talent to really justify that pick at 52, especially. I think 52 makes more sense, but Phil Mathis at 84 is also nice value.
Yeah, and it feels like, look, there haven't been many taken. It might not be a deep class on the D line. You have uncertainty with Tuitt, and you have age as a problem as well with Cam Hayward and company. You need receiver depth. You need to get that next receiver. Kevin Colbert, the one thing no one can criticize him for the last 20 years. The resume is there for Canton someday, but also draft-wise, it's there because he has been great at drafting receivers. They have been able to bring in receivers, have success, wash, rinse, and repeat, and bring somebody else in and not really miss a beat. And yes, you had a Hall of Fame quarterback. Maybe that helped things, but it's even happened recently when that quarterback wasn't as much of a Hall of Famer in terms of his level of play and now is gone. So you're flex well on Colbert in that regard. One more great receiver to pair with his quarterback of the future would be a real home run swan song for Kevin Colbert really here. And I will leave us with this, and I think we'll all appreciate this for the irony of this situation that Kenny Pickett ended up being drafted by the Steelers. I really think, and I said this, my instant reaction was this basically while you guys were analyzing it. Many wanted it to happen. Only a few really thought it would happen, and it ended up happening. Some may even predicted it happening, but I don't know if their heart of hearts, they really thought it would happen. It fell in their lap. He was QB1. They just had to do it. But we have a man in the chat, guys. He doesn't have a name. This isn't Joe Smith or anything like that. His moniker here is Pitman. The exact comment from Pitman as he closes off his appearance in the chat is, "This is a bad pick." And he's replying to a comment about Pickett. So obviously Pitt fans are going to support this man. He's a Pitt legend, and they're going to give him some time and probably want to see him out there. I can't imagine the majority of Pitt fans are going to hate this. They're going to love this probably. But because you do pass on the guy that others had as their QB1 and maybe has a higher ceiling, even though we won't see it in a while, and maybe other teams were correct, and there's a reason why he's dangling out there still, there's going to possibly be some controversy to it. And it does not appear that every Pitt fan is sold. Maybe they were getting some common sense in them and saying, hey, he's a Pitt guy, but that's not what I care about right now. I do care about the Steelers more and wanted the surefire guy in terms of a ceiling when you do have a bridge guy and you maybe don't need that NFL ready guy right now. So that's just interesting to me. You got some Pitt fans here that are not in favor of the Pickett pick. I did not think I would see the day just a few months ago. Guys, I had tons of fun. We kind of missed picks here after the Steelers went, but I think it was a shock and awe. Actually, they ended up getting Pickett, so I don't really care. We got tons of Pickett conversation in there that we had to get. Malik Willis is still on the board. Did you think we would end the show and Malik Willis would not be drafted? So we do not have Malik Willis conversation, but we definitely got to go. The Jaguars currently have their pick in here as we're pivoting out of the first round. Green Bay, New England coming up there, and that will close things up. The Steelers receiver, D-line, secondary, maybe receiver is likelihood to be the scenario there as they now will have that second round pick. And just last words from both of you here. The Steelers get Pickett. Kind of a surprise, but the pressure's on, and it happened.
A huge surprise. Again, just didn't expect them to take him, at this spot. And with everyone on the board too, it just wasn't expected. In fact, Colbert had revealed they were trying to move up for Kenny. So they wanted him. So this wasn't
he was the guy. Yeah.
So it wasn't just like, okay, we're sitting back and this is the pick. Like they wanted him. So Kenny was the pick all the way, it appears. And so
isn't it shocking they didn't think the Saints or a team would take him though? Did they know something we didn't know?
Yeah,
they said they would move up and he was the only guy they wanted. He was the only NFL ready guy, but there was 2 or 3 teams in front of them that could easily have taken him.
They must have, all I'm going to say, they must have been in the war room looking at the Saints moving up to 11 and must have been like, oh, like they must have been scared. They're like, oh,
you would figure, but they let the Saints sit at 19.
Yeah. Well, I guess they must, I don't know. It's kind of weird that like they might have known something that.
Yeah. I don't know. There's some backdoor deals between teams. We got some collusion going on here.
Yeah. I'll say that it was certainly risky.
Right.
To not move in front of them. I mean, it wouldn't have cost a lot to move up for 2 picks.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, Karl, last words. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's almost like we're talking ourselves out of trying to make sense of it. I get it. He's your QB1. You got to get your guy. But imagine the scenario where they say all that and then he's taken by the Saints right in front of them. It was risky. And did they know something? Were they talking to the Saints? I don't know. Karl, your last words.
I mean, they have their guy now, but the pressure is on. Obviously, Pickett was a fantastic college quarterback, but NFL is a whole different breed here. So
yeah,
even the most diehard Pitt fans can recognize that while his game might be well suited for the college game, he's a lot to learn and a lot to grow in to be a great NFL quarterback. So he has, I mean, obviously he has the support of the city right now, but he has to grow and grow into this position now to win over the actual Pittsburgh Steelers fan base. So should be interesting to watch how he adapts to the NFL now.
40 years ago, the Steelers passed on Dan Marino, who then embarked on a revolutionary career that could argue as being the greatest of all time. Certainly one of the best ever and a Hall of Famer. I don't feel like the ceiling's there for Kenny Pickett, but he ends up being the selection anyway. They don't pass up the Pitt man again. He ends up going from Heisman candidate and Pitt legend to staying at home in Pittsburgh and being the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, who still certainly has plenty of reason to have success in the NFL, and he's NFL ready, and there are high ceiling comps that can have success at the next level, whether he's a Hall of Famer or not. Regardless, the Steelers get their guy. Many want it to happen. Few thought it actually would happen. It does happen. Pickett is a Steeler. He will stay in Pittsburgh, but the theme is the pressure is now on, and being a Pitt legend does not mean you are a Pittsburgh legend and a Pittsburgh Steeler legend right away. So the work is there to do. He has the moxie. He has the drive. He has the fortitude. He can easily do the work. He has the makings of maybe getting it done. Granted, the team around him will need to be up to snuff as well. But there's just no guarantee for Kenny Pickett now. And there's nothing he can do to taint his Pitt legacy. But in terms of the overall city, there's still work to be done to be loved by Steeler Nation. As well as Pitt Nation. That'll do it. This show kind of seemed like it flew by. Well, I'm sure we'll be back here and feeling like it was just yesterday again next year if all of our lives and careers keep us around next year. But this has been the 2022 edition of our NFL Draft Show, our live edition here. You want to stay at Steelers Now. You want to stay at Pittsburgh Sports Now, Nittany Sports Now, WV Sports Now, all throughout the Now family of networks. The rest of the weekend for the draft, more shows, more commentary, more videos, clips from this, all of our written coverage, all of our complete coverage over there, all throughout those sites, especially with Pickett going to the Steelers. So Kenny Pickett is a Steeler. It happened. It fell in their lap and they got their guy. The pressure is now on. All right, we're done. All right, guys, that was awesome.